into the Ewam Dharma centers. So the Ewam Dharma centers were founded by Khen Rinpoche's brother, Sangha Rinpoche. And we're here at the Ewam Garden of 1,000 Buddhas in Arley, Montana, just outside of Missoula. And so the Ewam community has quite a few temples around the world. The center here in Montana, another one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, near Arcata, California, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and then a nunnery in Nepal with the retreat center, and another nunnery in Siliguri, West Bengal, India. And so Khen Rinpoche came out of Tibet in 1985 and went to South India to Namdrolling Monastery in the Bailakupi Tibetan refugee settlement and studied there for a number of years and eventually attained the title of Khenpo, which is like a professor of Buddhist philosophy. And ever since then, he's been teaching in various monasteries and Dharma centers, both in the Tibetan monastic system, as well as traveling around the world to Western and Asian Dharma centers to teach. So he came to the West first about 10 years ago and has been a resident teacher at the Ewam Garden of 1,000 Buddhas since then, and is the founder and main teacher of the Ewam Buddhist Institute, our summer intensive Buddhist studies program. And so we're here today to hear his teachings about the Buddha nature.
Buddha nature. The songs on Jeton, Jejang over, Redan Kor Jamse Chata, cutting some to Jedani, Consum Cheja Jabonjing method, they get a Chujatayang, Parazamba Jajator, Mame Bala, Govera de Goson Kubachim Beconita, and the Jason Joe. Singular Brunze the Gangi Chazanta Vimanga get and the Mindanda Chen, Sebe Savis, and the Sarvan Rogan make a teacher to Gindamaku nature and Jignasam Jakam Jabi. Tong Bemagabe Jabe Tenindale in So John Ojen Solan Beme Domboter, Javinam the Rangin Jeter, Senzo Pete, and that Sombarbe, Pemam Jung Dale Penzoro. Omin Chiji in Japan, to some Sanjay Gundang, Ransanjay Gungan, the Villa Mijala Soranda, Nilo Topa Chever, Tingel, Konda to get on Dicana, the Jelona, Jervakang, Sadat, and the Tembi Chiji Chambana. Never the Banta dan the like it on the Dan of Jinke, from Dada Mayek and Ravakunja Daki, Tamchike, the Chin, the Tijurki. Lasso, Ani Tataring Asoya. Tene, Samba Jacheva Sancho Semjikun Sikiore, and that's Hunzantati. Semjen Tam Che, and then recome the heaping himbo. Yabache, Shada, Yinshin. Then Dongan, Darong, Deva, Tassambates of Tamche, then the top Nipachen, Yambala, Somni, and it Dongan Tamche, the Deva Langobiche de la Samba Sancho to the Toki Bataji, December years.
And so we always begin our teachings with the motivation of the vast attitude of bodhicitta, which in this context is first recognizing, understanding that all sentient beings have that Buddha element, which we call the Buddha element or the Buddha nature. Everyone has that. And what that means is that they are able to be separated from their suffering and that they are certain to eventually attain bliss. And so in order to separate them from that suffering and establish them in that ultimate state of happiness, then think that you are listening to these teachings today in order to accomplish that goal.
And Tadanga so Trima Shia de Jetong de Sanji Chomden de Giata, de Tanganjima Tashina, and Sanji Chomden de Getene, so got Tamikin Dreva. Then Semje Tamchigi Jula, and I recome the Hipping Boya Batan, Tempiki Young. And the Rigi Tempi Young, they aren't an Donha Niganon and Do Young. Then Te ala tanga ti shedong te zimne ba chasunda. Chete temba jia. Tangi trindra ma chi. Ore te ma tsama yoku. Ani da trengi drama hie anda bote ta digna lola ya ta chetang chi. Ta ngondro dawchi. Ta nyamne che jimba dawchi la tene labyo. Tene de lubi jimsen dawote zo kare seti tan di jer korong peta nangba. Nangba ke nanglo ni magi ta ka tangbo niba samba se ta ka tama ke ti. Ka tama ke gungdun. Te yang tene di ndongha ni no ni ndoi chus to ngenge. No tendri ke tene yongji songza de te se je ko kale khabo do chagre te. Ani ngeke
and so today's teaching, I advertised or told people that it should be for people who are already practicing, at least already practicing the preliminary practices of Ngondro. And the reason why I said that is because this text that we're studying is a specifically Buddhist text. And amongst the Buddhist teachings, we have the first turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha, the middle turning of the wheel, and the final turning of the wheel. And this is the explicit intent. These teachings are the explicit intent of the final turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is still a sutra amongst the teachings of Sutra and Tantra, is still within the classification of sutra teachings. But because I thought that this is a particularly difficult subject, that it would be better to focus it in for those people who are at least practicing Ngondro.
Ani din dongha ni gi no ning doi khong stu de wa indu kala ta nga so chi ti xieber che bala wong na so pa de gu yo ma re te ina yang ta ti chom den de ge ma hien do de ta nga so chi ding sang pha ke do chi jam na ta pe nyam le hin de ni jang thong bo ya gi da chang chom sim ba sang thong bo le hi bi gang za de nam ji che de la ta ma song ya wam ta yang na ya hi ba po de then ten robo chi husung du tel ma song bare and the song da the chuni sing the travel kan chuni sing the travel ji song do de and nga so me che tang wa ji le de ko ka le ko cha no yo des.
And so, even though this is amongst Sutra and Tantra teachings, a Sutra teaching, because it's a Sutra teaching, I should say, you don't need to, this doesn't require anyone to have received any kind of empowerments or anything. But if I speak in very, colloquial way, then the Buddha taught this, with the intention that the listener would be someone who is at a very high level of practice. For example, a bodhisattva on the higher levels of bodhisattva practice. Or we could say because the bodhisattva who requested these teachings was someone who was at a very high level of practice, then the Buddha is discussing a subject which is this extremely subtle, profound, extremely subtle true reality. And so because that's the topic, then an ordinary person who doesn't have a lot of familiarity with these teachings, it would be quite difficult for them to understand this.
Ka tangbo li jang teni ka parpa de chuni chabalan ro yore de li jang teni chaba de ka tama ga nang la teni lab de yore.
And so as I often say, when we go from the teachings of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha into what we call the middle turning of the wheel, the level of reality being discussed becomes more subtle. And then when we move from there into the final turning of the wheel, it goes into an even more subtle level.
So, teni ta yang de chetang ge ta ten ju gu wang de tong na dan de le ju la ma se chi ta ju la ma de ani ta ji ta ka che mong bi sang ji re teni tati sanji shakya tupa ge gongre tenju ge chod ta kachen tati sanji de ge song mong bi sanji de ge te gongre ge chod nze ya ji ge ta julama se ji ta yod hi yore and di julama khurang ge teni di tendan de ta bög chulo gen de tong dam da yore te ta chetang nganje ni ma wa ta de che song ina ta ka parpa dang ka tharma ning ge ta Maybe the Tatok Tang Jayate, 다 대신님보다 된지 인세 바타니까 공부를 야그래.
And so then when we speak about the particular commentary texts which discuss this, that we're going to be talking about today, which discuss this Buddha nature that we're going to be talking about, the main one that we talk about is called in Tibetan, it's called the Julama. It's called the Uttara Tantra in Sanskrit, and in English, people know it by different names. That's why I'm listing off all these names. The Sublime Continuum. And so this is a teaching which was taught as a commentary by the future Buddha, Maitreya. And it's a commentary to the teachings of the present Buddha, Shakyamuni. And so, and the topic of that, or this Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Sublime Continuum text, there's lots of different ways that that's discussed according to the different schools of Buddhism in Tibet. But according to the early translation school of the Nyingma, then we say that it is the definitive meaning, the ultimate and definitive meaning of both the middle turning of the wheel and the final turning of the wheel is this topic of the Buddha nature, or what's just discussed in the Uttara Tantra.
Yeah. And in that, the Dangajik Trangi singing the Sotanita, Sheba Mamboji Chadik Yore, that done the Chik Trangdan, Seundu. Sanji Kore Rang the Zipa de Zo Majibache, they said Yendala, then Duni, Pay Lola, Duchi, Doja Lola, Duni here Yavache. And Sanji Kore Zipa Kang, but Taka here Yajitela, Jaglet and a Trangdus, Jaglet Nidan said Yore.
And so we talk often about this topic of what we would call provisional teachings versus definitive teachings, or definitive meaning versus provisional meaning. And so there's lots of different ways of discussing what that could mean, but basically what that means is that if the Buddha is teaching not in accordance with the precise vision of his own vision of reality, but is actually altering what he's saying to accord with the understanding or the minds of others, we call that a provisional teaching. Whereas if the Buddha is speaking and teaching according to the reality precisely as he sees it, then that's what we call a definitive meaning teaching.
And then this homes on that chair, then ka parba trong the yang yore, tama trong the yang and the pug nula yore, and that Handu Nima Vata de Chena, then recom dever hipping bote yavigatati, pata karina, that dig then Yavatigeta geta, chutigeta de Sotsama needers, that de la then a young jig. Penanda, Katama Gabdeso Tamjine, Pen and make the Nava, not the killers about the so Heungura, Kapabani, Tony he becomes a lamb, make the Nava, not the killers about the Heungura. The Heta de Sotsam at the Trangdon Yachos. The Nedon de recom dever he be himbo, more Tongchara, yin such a carrot della pavilion, the Heta de so nipitan tato inside.
And so, generally speaking, in Tibet, there are some schools or some scholars, some different traditions, who would say that the middle turning of the wheel of the Buddhist teachings are provisional, and only the final turning of the wheel sutras are definitive, and so forth. There are lots of assertions like that. But according to the Nyingmapa teachings, the Nyingmapa school, the early translation school of Nyingma, then any teaching which discusses the Buddha nature or the Buddha element, all of those are definitive meaning teachings, whether they are found within the middle turning of the wheel or the final turning of the wheel sutras. And so, and similarly, even if they are in the middle turning of the wheel sutras or the final turning of the wheel sutras, anything that talks about our ordinary levels of consciousness, like our, the way we see things with our eyes, hear things with our ears, taste things with our tongues, and so forth, those things are discussed both in the middle turning of the wheel sutras as well as in the final turning of the wheel sutras. And any of those topics are considered provisional meaning, whereas anywhere within those same sutras where it is discussed the topic of the Buddha nature, which is that empty essence and clear and luminous nature of Buddha nature, those are considered to be definitive meaning sutras or definitive meaning teachings.
Oh, that's all. Tangin de Tata Jeton, Tachi, Zamki, Statambo Pedi, Jig Red said the end of country, which is down when a Sanji get Tandonas, Tachi, Zamki said.
And so I'm just giving you a general presentation right now so that kind of where this Buddha nature teaching fits in, like where did the Buddha teach it, how did he teach it, and so forth. So unless I give you a little bit of a structure here and I just go directly into the topic, it's a little bit hard to contextualize. And if I go into too much detail, we don't actually have time for that.
That's all. Then that deni ma da jetang ge be da jula ma khore rang de tan dong do chi na then doji ni dun se ne de sung yo re dan de tang bo ko chu som de xie ge de di kha de na right de xie ge de then zang chob de xie ge de then yuan de de tlen se ni da doji ni dun se ni. And
so then if I talk about the way that the Sublime Continuum, the Uttara Tantra text itself is structured, then it's structured around what we call the 7 Vajra points. And those 7 Vajra points, the first 3 are the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. After that comes the Buddha nature, then enlightenment, and then qualities, and then activities. And that's how the chapters or how the structure of the text goes.
Ani that the nangin danga so ni dun sama de he to mare de ne gola data julama khorang ngini joja de kari sena konchu som temba yin sena yang de yore tenda song ta ji konchu sombu ko de te si ji he na de right de pe ko de bu chang they mind but go some the sun in my here, but take up a race here on the color.
And so I won't be able to go into detail on all of these 7 Vajra points. But at the beginning, we could say, and appropriately so, that the main topic of the Uttara Tantra is actually the 3 jewels. And so if we first talk about the 3 jewels, then the Buddha nature actually becomes quite easy and convenient to discuss, quite easy to understand. And otherwise, if we don't discuss the 3 jewels as they are discussed in this text and go directly and jump directly into the Buddha nature, it's quite difficult.
Sanji singing in Dereda say, Sanji de Pa, then the children are so good, Sensanda, which you do. Oh, Sanji said it and Derevanda, which Sensanda, which is. And in the name I dig it in a jinjo, Muntu Gendun, that would hear. Then that did Nila Car Daniel said it chew the Pa here. Ravala. Now the this journey. Kache yagi rumba in the dru changen check, dru yimba check, the dru changen the dru yimba nikala demba te carre chure. DJ here on the teneconchu something so this.
And so, for example, first, if I explain to you what the Buddha is and how the Buddha is, then you've got something to hold on to. We've got some place to base our discussion on. And so first, we'll have the Buddha. And then we have some people who follow in the footsteps of the Buddha, who follow after the Buddha. That's our Sangha. And then we have something that both of them have, and that is the Dharma. And so the Buddha has this Dharma, the Sangha has this Dharma. So we have someone who has completed the path, is the Buddha, someone who is working in their path, who is on the path, that's the Sangha, and then this Dharma, which both of them are endowed with.
Okay. Ani that day that nasoya wahakoswan that day sundan tambo be sanji de hieche. Then that's chego. That day sanji zi hie yadukal that naso munchwa jig karal kokuyose magi chi doji de man ro denge. Ani ngol tuktum do ji yo denge. And lomo da jam ro denge. That day gi chu sum yari sage. Munchwa jig tada naso teka tegara go do.
And so I think we all understood that, right? Our structure here. And so first we'll talk about the Buddha. And I think that what most people think of and what most people understand when we say the Buddha is some guy who went to Bodh Gaya and he's got some pointy thing sticking out of the top of his head and he goes around begging and teaching Dharma, right? That's what we think about when we think of the Buddha.
Nata Julama Rang non Patik Tata Sanji de Tambo Muzo Dugala, then the
So generally speaking, when we talk about a Buddha, we can talk about the Buddha in the aspect of Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. But here in the Uttara Tantra, when we're first identifying the Buddha, we are identifying the Buddha according to his Dharmakaya nature.
아니 다 가세레다 추그세 온드가라다 가서 추지 예인라 되니 다 연대 흔럽 쳐지고니 되니 연대 흔럽 드마치비 쳐지고니 요여바 강에 맞텔다 추그세 어쩌당 되지 야고를 봐세.
And so the general meaning of Dharmakaya then is that we have these spontaneously present qualities which are spontaneously present within that basic space of phenomena, in that space of Dharma Dhatu, and that those are those qualities, those spontaneously present qualities exist in a way which is, or that Dharmakaya itself is an uncomposed phenomena. It's not created by causes and conditions.
아니 줄라미 공부하다 되지네 답반이 됐어. 가세 답반이 됐으디 당보 예니 답반이 말라 치스 로버그 드바그 고데바 드바테 양 단도디갈라 답반이 돼 되는디 축구궁오 답반이 돼 축구궁오 강이 맞텔라다 산지세
Or another way of presenting this from the Uttara Tantra is to talk about the Buddhahood of the twofold purity. And that twofold purity is that, first of all, the Buddha, this Dharmakaya, is primordially pure, is originally pure, has always been pure. And then secondly, when that which is originally pure is separated from or is purified of these adventitious or temporary obscurations which obscure it, then that becomes the purity of being, separate from the adventitious stains. So that's what we call the twofold purity of Dharmakaya.
춘이기 토라 다짜네 니히요 말보다 춘이기 토라 미니바 마체 추제 능인 추능데스 탐지 양파다 가세레 다시다 파세 소마세고 말에다 근데 로버드 띵띵 왔다도 진다 이야송아지라 오다 깨당거다 덴지기다 니마치비라 인젤 야고데스.
And so these obscuring factors do not abide within that true nature. They not only don't abide in that true nature, even these our mistaken, confused perceptions of phenomena themselves don't abide in that true nature. That they actually, just like how clouds will temporarily appear in the sky and then will dissipate, even those mistaken perceptions, confused perceptions of ordinary phenomena then don't exist and are not part of the fabric of that true reality. And that true reality itself is uncomposed. It is uncomposed, and therefore none of these adventitious or composed phenomena abide or remain within that true nature.
아니 양 까타마게 노니다 산지세에 다 니마치지라도 채와인스 마도 산지생인데 맥다 나와다 나다 때자해동다 덴디고니 책임에스 산지생인데 니마치비 춘이기 고니 되는데 책이여세 덴데송요레스
Kathamakabla.
아레 까타미캅사다 산지.
And in the final turning of the wheel sutras or teachings, that it said that the Buddha is distinguished or is particularly understood to be is distinguished by the fact that the Buddha is this true reality, which is uncomposed phenomena, and is not distinguished by, or is not a particular characteristic of Buddhahood, is not the way that they look or the way that they speak, but is their actual true nature, which is this uncomposed nature.
다 같이 춘익 먼저 춘익의 랑인지래야다 나서 담마가야세 산지세 인데지를 약이오레스.
And so the important point we're getting at here is that the Buddha, or this Dharmakaya, is that the true nature of reality, or we can talk about it in terms of when that true nature of reality becomes fully manifest. That's what we refer to as Buddhahood or Dharmakaya.
Okay.
So if I keep talking in circles, I'm going to give you a headache, right?
다 텐데 손잔다 줄라마 랑 나노라야 산지게들이 세니데 희용데가나야 다 되니 가세레다 되니 연대 제대 라고지 그봐 랑던다 yendan 되니 되니 연대 제대 라고지 다 야기요레다.
And in the Uttara Tantra, the Sublime Continuum Shastra or commentary text, then what it talks about then in terms of the definition of the Buddha, it says that the definition Buddha has the qualities of the benefit of self, the benefit of other, and it refers to this as the eight qualities of the twofold benefit is the definition of the Buddhahood. And so we'll go into that now. And so then those qualities then are the verse from the text reads, the Buddhahood is endowed with the twofold benefit. It is uncreated and spontaneous, not to be realized through external causes. It is possessed of knowledge, compassion, or knowledge, love, and ability.
단 누지페는 나한테 담보 지와 요래 받으니 봐 요래 다른 집바 요래다 시와 요래라 대 임비 진생게 다 나한테 오지라다 가서리 동안 요래 산지를 던지게 되니 안드마치게 랑인도 담보 지와 받으니 봐 타만 집발라 소바더니 메비나 아니 디마치 인생이 되는 성구 요래.
And so the first of those qualities then is said that it's uncreated or uncomposed. And what that means is that is the opposite of something which is created or is composed. Like, for example, with me, first I'm born, I live for a certain amount of time, and in the end I will die or cease to exist. And because I have that nature of being composed, then I have suffering. However, the Buddha is uncomposed, which means that the Buddha was never born. The Buddha doesn't abide anywhere, and the Buddha will never cease to exist. And so, therefore, the Buddha is referred to as uncomposed or uncreated.
다 니바델라 륜지트바세. 다 륜지트바세 온데 페난다 나소지 가세레 르가게다 가세레 뚜바젠다. 생각 남뚝지 나솔 된다고 그래봐. 르가게 뚜바지 생각 남뚝지 된다고 찍더니 매바세요. 된다고 매비게 아니 연된 담지 얘는 힘들고 쳐지거니 얘대만 마도 나소 나긴 된디게 뚜바다 남뚝 다 트라바지라.
And then the Buddha is spontaneous or spontaneously present. And what that means is that for us, we are doing some kind of elaborations or some kind of actions which are created in terms of our body and speech and in terms of our thoughts and so forth. Everything is preceded by some thought or created or instigated by some thought. And the Buddha doesn't have anything like that. The Buddha's qualities are all spontaneously present.
되는다 뒤연데 니데지 아니 심바델라다 yenji change tomen bas ta den revige deni tariya ta kasin dimatse yende rangi lundu de yabate dega sachi mechigi yenda jigi she yenda jigi ta chi ko nyone dende jigi ti nilong chitawa yinde togresene tuktumeji mares 대 나랑 줄에 이시 줄에 제시니 대 이시 대게 되는 데 요드 줘봐인데 이시 대게 또 잡아지래 마도 대 마임바 대가 사지기 지 로당 된리게 되는 리파 탑지기 되니 또 통해지 말레스 주니데.
And so when it says not to be realized through external causes, what that means is that this Buddhahood or Dharmakaya nature, which is uncomposed and has these spontaneously present qualities, is not something that someone else can explain to you and that you can understand through your ordinary mind and then realize through your ordinary level of thinking, but is something that is only realized through your own timeless awareness, your own primordial wisdom, and that by it is the subject and object of primordial wisdom And only through that way can one understand it, but you can't understand it through your ordinary mind or some kind of ordinary logic and reasoning. And so the important point is that these qualities of being uncomposed and spontaneously present are something which can only be realized by that primordial wisdom, which is generated through meditation and can't be realized in other ways, such as just through ordinary thinking and rationalizing. And so these first three qualities then are the qualities of the self-benefit, of benefit for oneself. And those first two qualities of being uncreated and spontaneous will be much more clearly understood and explained much more when we talk about the Buddha nature itself. And then these qualities or aspects of the benefit of others, or the value for others, or the qualities for others, are the 3 points of wisdom, love, and ability or power. And so that quality of wisdom or knowledge then first is just like what we were talking about before, how we have these qualities of being uncomposed, the spontaneous presence of all of these qualities that can't be realized by external factors. So we understand that that nature, which is the Buddha nature, exists and pervades to all living beings with no distinction between them, that everyone is the same in having that Buddha nature. And it's from that perspective that the Buddha is said to have wisdom or knowledge. And so for us, when we're looking out at people, we think, oh, some people are really intelligent. Some people are not so intelligent. Some people have more powerful attachment. Some have more powerful aversion. Some are more ignorant. Some are more, have greater suffering. Some have greater levels of happiness. But we aren't really able to understand that those 3 qualities of being uncomposed, spontaneously present, and not realized by external factors pervade to all beings. And so that the fact that the Buddha understands that the true reality of all living beings is that those 3 qualities are present within them, then that's the first quality of the Buddha's knowledge or the Buddha's wisdom. And then the quality of love, is that by understanding that nature, understanding that all beings have that nature, then the Buddha, out of his great love and compassion, then actually explains these things or teaches the Dharma to others. And so the power, that the ability of the Buddha, the power of the Buddha, is that by that power, by that primordial wisdom, by that wisdom of the Buddha, by the power of the Buddha is able to cut off the flow of our karma and our afflictive emotions. And so those are 6 qualities, and we were saying that there are 8 qualities. So the way that they get to the number 8 is that they talk about first off, the qualities for self, which are those qualities of abandonment and realization. And then, so that's one, the qualities, the benefit of self, and then the benefit for others is the other one. So that becomes 8. So we have the aforementioned 6, and then the kind of basis for division. So we had this 3 qualities for self and 3 qualities for other. Those are considered numbers in the list. So that's 7 and 8.
And then also that dino na peta shesa ga tambu pe de ti ten ko mare ba da chi pe na chirong so ina ya doman tha de di se ba yore da se deva tha to ji thubya yore da se ni ba mbele shi guna ta pe ten san do de tambu sanji ten ko yore ten ni any dini ma de she de ten yin da la ma jap ni o ten dis ni yong ko yore.
And so when we talk about this with examples. And an example of this, so for example, if we're trying to tell people that you can completely eliminate all of your suffering and you can attain this stable level of happiness, then our first example is the Buddha, like the Buddha did it. And so then once we show that someone has done it, that there is an example of someone who has accomplished that, then we can explain how that applies to others or how other people can do that.
Ta dinong la tro ro ji he ba re de ta dang bu korang be chu ni lo bi chan ji he ong do wa是吧你把de de ni di do bi chan he ong do wa ta dang bu chu ni lo kang yin ba de ye de yin ba ji ci se de do xian he ni 是吧
correct
啊那边的长期给的都有的吧ta de ma ci yin ba 是吧 la so ba de 都有的吧你就的一个你lo一个你老天爷把长的马车，这样等的多吧，你老个等多吧，你的演大了，等把拉说吧，当等的有的了，可能吧，的真正去做，而且等的有个产的这些，的有件生不透的这些，是吧？等的是这样的等你的等吧噻，我等的是你养活的。
的有的有钱的人，可是有钱可是。
那边的有些呢，他。 가자 그 찬이시 오다 예 배는 산지 코로 다리 임바 예 대임바 정도 마체 다양디 가스 희고다 배는 가스 마신이 용기요 말았다.
And so when we're talking about these 6 qualities, so first we're talking about the true nature of reality. When we're talking about this uncomposed, spontaneous, present qualities and so forth, we're talking about the basic foundational like ground of reality. And so that's our object of knowledge. And then we talk about the realization of that object of knowledge. And so when we just have that object, then and the first off the realization of that, then that is the realization which helps yourself, like you understand it for yourself. But then having understood that for yourself, then showing it to others and using that knowledge as a way of embracing others is the benefit for other. So first we have this aspect of the object of knowledge of this uncomposed, spontaneously present qualities that can't be realized by any extraneous factors. And then we have the subsequent 3, which are about embracing others.
Okay, yeah. Di tangbo di chugu cha de ngue zong du. Ani dini ma longzhe ni bo de, longgo de chugu ni bo de, ne ka se re ko ji pa ka se re do ja yin nang le shan ho de ka te na ani zog na ba yore, chugu ta de ni chen ji gi na ba yore, de la so ba ta ba de ma hi ko yore. Ta de na so ta na tri ma hi ba che.
And so once this first is a discussion of the Dharmakaya. And so once you've identified that Dharmakaya, then you should understand that it is from that Dharmakaya that there come the subsequent manifestations of the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya who appear to other living beings in order to train them or lead them in various forms, and even in forms which do show the way of having birth and death and so forth. And so that's how you should understand that. But for today, we don't have time to get into all those details. And so that's the explanation, then the conclusion of the explanation of the Buddha. And then following in the order of the text, the way that the text proceeds, now we'll talk about the Dharma.
다 추이들라 양 줄라마 따지는 고름이요 된 제대세 고파다 람크 아니 연대스인데 숨대지니 제대데 마치 야기요다.
And so then the way that the Uttara Tantra, the Sublime Continuum, the way that it talks about this is it's another a list of 8 qualities, and these are the 8 qualities of cessation and of the path.
And then sonda bena kasireta ngopa delaya da jedangda jikpageta nyemung yingla da kasire nyemung da travicha ying number tabicha tambo de yagor da chuse de wala da ying number tabicha kan yimba dela jedangam ngopa sene de ji yago yorda.
And so when we talk about the truth of cessation, what we're talking about is the utterly pure basic space.
So just
keep that in mind for a second. And so then keep that in mind, and we're going to talk about these other factors here. So it says that it's inconceivable, it's not two, it's concept-free, purity, clarity, and the remedy.
So that the song that some duality under which is here about some said that they carried said the pagi telam babjagat the chuji yin gang but they and then also da take dratsik jabada yemeda yimina sopa tamchi in depi getting gasepe yin tanga so in a woman say daughter tatamchi mnivike that chuniki koko yorda.
And so when we say inconceivable, what is meant by that is that it can't be thought about, it can't be expressed in words, that this Dharma Dhatu, this basic space of phenomena that we're talking about is beyond the expression of words or sounds, beyond the concepts of existent, non-existent, being or not being any particular thing. It's beyond any of those things. And so that's what we call basic space, what we call the middle way, not falling into any extreme or any particular category.
Tangasa chetang rawadi heba ina ta chuni de ina tenen ta kala ya malong ba ko bre ta long sona de di chuni chagi yo mare chuni de chuchen tamche ge tenen ta le malong ba ji ya go ro de long sona de chuni se de chagi yo mare.
And so when we're talking about the true nature of things, then it needs to be something that doesn't fall into any particular extreme or any particular category. If it falls into an extreme, and by an extreme, that can mean just falling into being any one particular thing, then that will not be the true reality, because what we need to understand when we talk about the true reality is that the true reality means the true reality of all things. And if that true reality became any one particular thing, it no longer would be the true reality.
Right tade romais the song yore chuji ying la yamesa right tade romais ta ko chuji ying di yamere ba dela ta dela right dere da chuji ying right de ji yore da sin de se lo yo mare sere da.
And so it's said that because the basic space of phenomena, that true reality, is inseparable from things, then you can't say that there are different kinds of this basic nature. You can't say that there's like this kind of basic nature and that kind of basic nature, but the basic nature itself pervades and is inseparable from all things.
And so the
first of these 8 qualities we're going to talk about here with the Dharma is this inconceivable aspect.
Ni yo mare sere kare ni yo mare sere le da nyamo ba ga tendige ta de na so nam ju mu gi semla di le nyu ni yo de ba de la ti yo mare is ko.
And then now it says, the text literally just says the two don't exist, or not two, something like that. And what that means is that there is no karma and afflictive emotions. And so in our ordinary mind, we all have karma, we all have afflictive mental states, but these two do not exist in this Dharma.
Tadi penajikta di lam chi songza lam te pangto gita ishi gngor jil jar gorba tenda songza tene simba de la ta tome se onde ta namto thamche namto mepa da wajil ko ko yorta namto thamche da trawa senanda namto mepa senanda tedi jil ko ko yorta.
And so the next is free of concepts. And so because what we're talking about here are di lam la go dro go like go pa mari
ore tadi chetang da ko di chui de lam golam nin ro go ba golam nin ro go ho de ta lam senata ta kachin da pangtu jil jandu go ta.
And so when we're here talking about this, when we're talking about the path of cessation or the truth of cessation and the truth of the path, so what we're talking about is some level of realization and abandonment. So abandoning the things to be abandoned, realizing what's to be abandoned. So we're talking about some level of primordial wisdom or timeless awareness. And so this concept of concept-free means that in that state, there is no longer any ordinary conceptual mind or ordinary thought.
Kachin di number someday yin tuba the tawala lenyo nida then number topala so you might be number topala patam get the travige and kaserita chuniki.
And so these first three qualities then are talking about what is that true reality or that basic space. And so those were those three qualities of being inconceivable, not having these two factors of karma and the afflictions, and being free from any ordinary thought, or what sometimes we refer to as a perverse or inappropriate thought.
Ta niba de ta magita lamji yonde som yang gurba ta lamji yonde som de yang ta sar nyembo chungi jese ta kwada sarwada nyembo se di number som de yagre.
And so then the next three qualities are the qualities of the truth of the path. So those first three were the qualities of the truth of cessation. And now for the qualities of the path, those three are listed off as purity, clarity, and the remedy.
And that in this honganta lam se de ta kaseongata ti pangtug ta yishi se kumare ta pangtug zubi yishi la ta chetang mu zongora wa pena ngaso sa ta lam se de tamki pangtug zubi yishi la mu zongo yore.
And so when we're talking about a path, when we use the term path, what we're talking about actually is a timeless awareness, a primordial wisdom, which is considered to be something which is abandoning certain things and realizing certain things. So whenever we're talking about, paths and bodhisattva bhumis and those kind of things, that's what we're talking about.
That indigenous benefit palam gi hitege ihitela ani ta nyomo batang tani pakcha ta ki batang che takpi gi tani di hije indikala tani ta siyoreta.
And so that first of these three qualities of purity means that when we're talking about the timeless awareness in the mind stream of an Arya being, a being who's on one of these bodhisattva bhumis, then all of these afflictive emotions together with their mental imprints or habitual patterns are all purified. They are all pure, and therefore they have this quality of purity.
And then nipa de la sawa se de ani ngaso de jamban senjeno sonai ishi nawa lameva senai peteko ishi ga nawa de sadde ma tu yang ngaso pechi ngaso kaduina na chbe jene tema me ba la de do de mai ba jene ishi ga nawa de pe lame jene sadde.
And so then the second point is clarity. And so as it says in the Calling the Names of Manjushri, the perceptions or the appearances of timeless awareness have no darkness. And so what that means is that there's never some absence of awareness or absence of mindfulness, but that there's always this clarity in that, in those appearances or in that perception that comes forth from that primordial wisdom.
And then also the kase sembun to bala yata ki nyam bada tene pacha dang ani leka dang kanganda myoda ko ya kong che che ni reba tene chin ko ti ta mandula Then they mada in the go to circle the jokes on Hakomendo, Dawa take Saris, Nin Saris, oh, some Saris singing that in it. That Lord Saris, Dawa Saris singing out the Pazuno go not some roads.
And so for us in our minds, we have these afflictive mental states. We have the habitual patterns to those mental states. We have so many kind of jobs and difficulties in our minds. We have so many problems and difficulties. Our minds are totally full of those. So we don't have that quality of purity. And we have no idea when any of these things are going to be overcome, so they stay in our mind for months, 1, 2, 3 months, even years. Our minds are clouded in this darkness from all of these thoughts and difficulties.
This is about the latter, that's a Nyembo. Nyembo say on the lam dege, Chadam Mungsong, Nyembozo to me, lams here.
And so the third says the remedy. And so what that means is that this path, so the truth of the path, is a remedy which serves as an antidote, which will eliminate attachment, aversion, and ignorance.
Lambda Gonkada Cheki Yori, Yamne, Chehachi, Nyembo, the Calico Chadu.
And so for us, we're practicing a path, we're meditating, we're doing what we can in our practice, but it's often difficult for that practice to actually serve as a direct antidote to these afflictive states.
And it did a song that, though this not any Ngopala, any Ngopachuji in Chala, and the Kazari and then some Lam Pandu with Chani and then Sunday, Tendriget and then drop, and then Golom ni Don, and then Jetta Debate. And so then we had this discussion of the Dharma, which encompasses these two aspects of the truth of the path and the truth of cessation. So we had these three qualities of the basic space of phenomena, which is the three qualities of the truth of cessation. And then the three qualities of the path, of the truth of the path, which are these qualities of elimination and realization, or abandonment and realization, giving us 6 total qualities. Then you add into the bases of division, which were the truth of cessation and the truth of path, and that gives us these 8 qualities. And that's what we refer to. These 8 qualities are what we refer to as Dharma in Buddhism. Okay. Yeah, and
and so we'll leave it at that, and now we're going to move into the Sangha.
Then Chato may be double to say. Oh, Tendicini, that drove you and that drove here.
And so with the Sangha, we talk about 6 qualities. And so we have the quality of knowing how things are in their reality, the quality of knowing things in their multiplicity, and then the quality of self-awareness. Chimasum de Kare? Jita Jini.
Chato may be double to.
Chato maybe.
Chada Pudra Mandap Signavala.
Okay, Hakos. And then we have the quality of being freed from the obscurations, which we call the obscurations of attachment, the obscurations of, we could say, obstructive obscurations or solid obscurations, and then the inferiority obscurations. And so but in brief, what we're talking about when we talk about the Sangha is someone who has the qualities of awareness and freedom. And so what that means, awareness means that you have seen something, and freedom means that at some point your mind was bound by something, and you were freed from that, or you freed yourself from that. And so someone who has the qualities of awareness and freedom is considered Sangha.
And also the Sangha House singing the Yore Silva. Sangha House nungata kasi gendun so devi kejare sirema. And then the songza di gendun gitsini kasi songdo tago yores.
And so we have a place here on our property at the garden here called the Sangha House, and supposedly that's a place where the Sangha should remain, should stay. And so those of you staying in that house should probably check and see how much of this definition you actually fulfill.
That day na yidinula cheso mandramada mambo hojide. Anita America chutu kavalrona chi Sangha senen labdekidwa.
And so I'm sure there's lots of different people here in attendance of this teaching, and in all of your individual like Dharma centers and communities, I'm sure they refer to all of you as Sangha, Sangha, Sangha. So check for yourself.
Ani ta disom gnone ta tambo right gar right goresena chetavate right gore chenyebate right gore raba ene nangda right go yore ta di cheunde ta chetawa seunde tuning 통화 되래 raba ta tuning 통화 seunde ta peji 다리 디노나다 마치 예제베다 좀 된데기 때문에 춘이 힘든내자 트라기 춘이 나이자와 디게다데서 되네 라이데바세네 다 파체 가서 고 대체사래 다 대소그다데서 고 라이 통다 고용 똑섬세난다 같이 다 디드네디 통에 링에젤 고기였다 춘이 제따위인데 그 단 통바될 고기였다.
And so then when we talk about these qualities of awareness, so we have three qualities of awareness. The first one is the awareness of things in their true reality, in how they actually exist. And what that means is understanding the true reality or true nature of things, that this extremely subtle true reality that the Buddha has taught. So being aware of that or seeing that, going through the process, which we refer to as understanding, experiencing, and realizing that. So someone who has those qualities has this quality of the awareness of the suchness or the reality of things.
And that Chuni said that ngaso 시작의 추탄기가 더는데 통국이래 내가 Chuni said, right? And kashi yatati yonun damada yorta kashi da dignanuneta nang osagata ripatia Chuni gita ripare ta kachi kare ino mino ta di 소속 냠내 제동다 라마 소속 냠내 제동다 담다 요래 대정데 just 춘이게 단 통바이 난다 난게 셈이게 단 통바이 난다 같이다 대소 담기다 디치다 문도 요다.
And so when we talk about this understanding the true reality, what we're talking about is understanding the meaning of all things, the true essence of all things. And there's lots of different ways of talking about that. So sometimes it's talked about in terms of the true reality being your inner luminosity of your mind, that's referred to as awareness or pure awareness. And so there's lots of different ways of practicing, and there's lots of different ways of lamas to teach you. So when we're talking about this awareness of the true reality, then, in some contexts it's talked about as the true nature of your mind. So whatever kind of practice you're doing or whatever teachings you're receiving, there's a certain corresponding understanding of the true reality, and that's what's meant in this context.
Okay. And that's
and so for yourself how much of this awareness of the true reality or of things in their true nature that you have understood for yourself, right?
아니 다 빼나 된다비기 춘이데 나랑 똑바 마체 다 샘진 전예바란 통도호나 데이드니디 전예레 마도 카시제게 나랑 그 다된 통 연다 더만 통이 망보여다 그래봐고 따와 구동제 이거리 집으로 빼줘 버려 대 연대 빼 샘진 라오제는 문다제기 톨로 또 샘진 연다 때는 마도 발라서 봤다 된데 망보여래 된다 손자디 진예세 온데 탐지 나들이 체매 바카센 통도호나 될 진예세.
And so when we're talking about the awareness of things in their multiplicity, what we mean then, what's meant by that is the nature of phenomena themselves or things themselves. So not just the reality of things, but of those the things themselves. And so for example, if you realize the true nature, the first of these 2 points, only on your own basis, but don't realize that that also applies to everything else, then that means you didn't realize the nature of things in their manyness. So there are a lot of people who can realize the nature of one thing, but can't apply that to other things. So they realize their own nature, but don't apply that same realization to other beings. And so when we talk about the nature of, in this context, of the awareness of things in their multiplicity, it means to not only realize that nature, that true nature of yourself, but to understand that that also is the true nature of all living beings. And so there are many people who will realize, like the nature of humanity, but won't understand that other beings have that same nature and so forth. So, but we should be trying to, or we should be, the understanding in this context of the manyness or the multiplicity means that you understand that everything has that same nature with no distinction.
Deneji cheda sene ene gomdong chuni ki tene soso la yojuji phagi tene me ji hie na ya lama ji hie na te tangbo la ala yi chi ka la khabu yi raw te si ji chiru chena ten raw thong ka la khabu thong sa de yenda la yoba yang hi ka la khabu o tene chag do wa
shinda la yoba she yang
shen
yenda
pa da pan
no. And so for us, like we might receive some instruction, some meditation instruction from our teacher on how to meditate upon the true reality. And so even then it's even hard for us to trust or hard to even believe that that reality is true. And then even if we start to gain some belief in that, it's hard to actually realize it. And then once we've realized it for ourselves, it's actually quite difficult to understand that for others as well.
So
these 2 points are really important: the understanding or the awareness of things in their reality, or the awareness of the true reality, and then the awareness of the multiplicity.
So that Riyada Peta Gom Jamne Korompe, Shuji Jenny, Matum Tontubia Yamar, Kotambodini, Soso Ribi, he Koronya Mare, Ki Metsadicala, Soso Ribi, he turned the Tobadi Kaliko Chasareta.
And so the third is even more difficult than those first two, and that is called the inner awareness. And what that refers to is our self-cognizing or self-awareness, which we call the timeless awareness, which is that self-awareness. And so that's what we need to be seeing. And that can only be seen through a lot of, persistent meditation. Otherwise, you can't see it. And so first, we haven't even given rise to that level of self-awareness. And so without giving rise to it, we can't realize it. So it's quite difficult.
Pagi mugu hie yaji zonro. Pena ngegi teren chironsong hie de jikala take this kondo hudo. Pecha jitana chironsong take this kondo hudo. Te ina uni nang susu rangribi hidi chechini tongende tape masikali ko chasareta.
So what is meant by this self-awareness, or what is meant by this term? And so right now, if I explain these things to you, you gain a little bit of understanding. If you read some texts about this, you'll gain a little bit of understanding. But really, dadi kandirela, dachi shena shea the tishe gorore, the deplona she gorore, the
rangribi hise undukalata sosolata kasere gombi tsalichu hichege chunigi dondeta monsum tongentel kokoro.
And but this self-cognizing or self-awareness, which is one of these types of, or the kind of the primordial wisdom, which is the self-awareness, then is something that comes through the power of your meditation. It's so through the power of your meditation, you have a direct experience of that true reality.
No. the Gase Dendrichi Gunishego, they hear that they don't take a good evening as of a huge young Najana which Gajan, Anna keep by not saying, Nam says, and but did it dig young Najahum that the Yazoche Matu. None on some day, then they pick a little door.
And so we don't have that direct experience of self-awareness. And what we have on our basic level of understanding is something that we would call an inferential understanding. So we understand through what other people said and through things that we understood in our conceptual mind, but we don't have that direct experience. And when we only understand things through this inferential level of understanding, then it's easy for us to gain a lot of pride thinking, oh, I really understand. I'm a great scholar. I'm, this and that. But that doesn't actually lead us to that inner experience.
Anita didn't which in a dang that I hear you, that she be sure machine. Anita so tending Najaji jets had the gabla, that needs some shitty sambache. Then the Najaji only, then Najag Kumbali, you think chimachas. Then Dinima no some Tonya tell it, bed the drug. And the Chico Mese de la Zipo, the Wachi, then they go sharing a chicken, my family, they could little do it, then depend on motos.
And so just as an aside here, if you do, gain a bunch of pride about these things and think that you understand everything and think that you know everything, then it's said that in that solid, ball or solid, lump of pride, then no great qualities can come about. Just like how it's a difficult example, but anyway, it says, that the quality, the water-like qualities can never amass inside of something which is like a solid lump of pride. So anyway, the point is that you will spend your whole life thinking that you know everything and thinking that you have nothing to learn. And at the time of your death, you're going to realize that none of that was of any benefit to you.
Then this home Zankalata, the Nasopen again doing a Gargo, Jetta. Chini de, then it got he go do. They are the Nang la Gombita Yukon, so rangry be she did Julie.
And so what we need as a Sangha in terms of our awareness is that we need the awareness of the true reality. We need the awareness of the multiplicity. Then through the power of our meditation, we need to generate that self-awareness, the timeless awareness, self-awareness, which has a direct experience of that true reality. And so those were the three qualities of awareness, and now we're going to talk about the three qualities of freedom.
That someday Nyandrubdang, Shidrubdang, maybe Drupasita, some Songyana decor. That dinuni that Tambo Penadi, Nyamumbi Drupa Seundi, Naso Tata Bechi, Dochashi to Tomo de Gaya, Solongi Jabde de Gabla, Ya Subni River. Take it, the Nikas, Chunigit, Tapats on Tubze Lion could drop the Hidua. Telling Yandrup Servala, Tapats could Dubze Coron, Tapa Dubze Tanayan copy the drop the Hudicala, telling Yandrup Se.
And so we have these three qualities of freedom then, which are the qualities from these three types of obscuration. And so we gave them different names earlier, but we can call them in more common path language. We can call them the obscurations of the afflictive mental states, the cognitive obscurations, and then what we call the mendrips and incarcerated. And so those are the third one is what we can call it literally means like the lower intention or the lesser motivation, something like that, obscurations from a lesser motivation. So anyway, when we're talking about the first one, which is the obscurations of the afflictions, what that means is that when we are having a mind which is totally stirred up by our three poisonous minds of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, then that is obscuring even our mere attainment of freedom from samsara.
So, Otere, da Topa, Shidub Seum Bukala, Travada, Tamchin Chimbigeta, and Sanji Cheta Zibanagi, Tom Tabigit, and a Druba Travadella. Then
And so now the next one, which we call the cognitive obscurations, which in the actual root text was called the blockage obscuration or the solidity obscuration, something like that. So the difference between the first one and the second one is a level of subtlety. And so this is a more subtle level of obscuration that we call, more commonly in the path language, we call a cognitive obscuration, which is the thing that is obscuring you from seeing the reality precisely as the Buddha does in his omniscient mind. And so what we're talking about here is in stages as your timeless awareness or your wisdom of the path is increasing in power, then the obscurations are losing power. And so what we're talking about then is like as you're going higher with your wisdom, the obscurations are becoming more subtle. So the initial obscurations that you overcome are more coarse and easier to abandon, and you get into more and more subtle ones as the obscurations are waning and the power of your awareness is growing.
So then that's what men up said they did that so chicken around the catching the that take a chimp out here. They changed round the corner, easy the maybe to pass here.
And so when we talk about the third one, which is the obscuration of a lesser motivation, what that means primarily, because we're talking in the context of a Mahayana path here, a Mahayana practice, is that this is talking about any kind of selfish intention. So the obscuration, that this is considered a particular type of obscuration in this context, the obscuration of being obscured by a selfish intention.
So yeah, this that they gain doing the thing.
And so those are all the qualities of the Sangha.
And then this one that Sanji la da Deni Jeden Rawati Yago was.
And so the Buddha had the 8 qualities of the twofold benefit, right?
And choosing in the golem.
And then in the Dharma, we had the 8 qualities of the truth of cessation and the truth of the path.
And then
with the Sangha, we have the 8 qualities of awareness and freedom.
Oh, that did some change in the Nashi. That Julama Coreno that in Taship Jap, Massimo Labdureta. That this one Gendun Tela, then it, that when a pitch handed Yana, that Gendun Tela young, then it Gendun Muda, then it Tawa Gendun, then it Mumbo Senate, then it should judge in the Tower and Douglas. And
so in the actual Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Sublime Continuum text, then there's a lot more details that get sussed out in the subsequent sections on these individual sections of the 3 jewels. For example, in the Sangha, then there's a whole nother discussion of the actual Sangha and the imputed Sangha and so forth.
Sanji de Lambramba in the dress hanging Gendun de ta Drejimba, ta Kavala Yona, Taco Chibayomare, that Kashi Drejimada with you, Gendun said.
And so what we need to understand, though, our main point here is that a Buddha is one who has already attained that ultimate freedom through that path, where the Sangha is someone who is in the stages of freeing themselves.
That choose on the Disney Demic. Chachire, that Disney Demba, that Sanjila Denkure, Gendula Denkure, that choose it.
And then the Dharma is this quality which both Buddhas and the Sangha possess, that they both have.
당연히 초쟁이 직성 방송보이는 당보 추의 시 아니 디노니 드레스 받인데 상지스 드레 임바데 겐둔세 드레도 야나데 고데원도 삼데 용기선다고 도와.
And sometimes it actually seems that it might be easier to understand if we started by discussing the Dharma and then we talked about the Buddhas who have already been liberated through that Dharma and the Sangha who are in the process of being freed through that Dharma. So regardless, though, whether you're a Buddha or a Sangha, a member of the Sangha, then and so it is through or by relying upon that Dharma that one actually attains those states.
Okay. And there is then also tari karagresena dan dorduna ta
Something I wanted to say and it just slipped out of my mind.
Ola so ta tadanga so tari reg ma shepi ngana ta konchuson oreta dige sanji re mato de chu da gendun de so tamchela teni chu da gendun de so nen tatu bare re hieng tadna ta sanji da tatu imba ji jagre ba ta de chu na da gendun na da ta tatu bin chini ka imba de jagore dinona Seni kasi yone je mdoela.
Yo.
Tapena gendun tatuba de yakiore. Mato tapi gendun tong yakio mara.
No.
Din seni ti tatuba de ya. Ene ma kasi Ivan roko wa. Sanjila ta ting madu yayo mara.
Okay.
Tatuk te garang yajide. Ta ko chuina ta tendes jeni to matu yore gendun na landro tamato ki chiba yajore. Inan din seni tatuk de yakio ta.
And so another thing we need to understand is that when we're talking about these definitions here of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, when we talk about the Buddha, these Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, these are all talking about the ultimate level of what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is. But for the Buddha, that's all there is. There's only one kind of Buddha. But in the Dharma, then in the Sangha and in the Dharma, then in the Sangha, it'll talk about more distinctions. Like there are certain levels at which you have been liberated or not. It's not just this ultimate aspect of liberation, ultimate aspect of awareness, whereas the Buddha is the ultimate aspect of all of that. So in the Sangha, there's certain people we could call imputed Sangha versus actual Sangha and so forth. There's more distinctions, whereas Buddha is just Buddha. There's no more to it.
Oh, yeah.
So if I go into it more than that, I think we're just going to get headaches here. Okay, so let's take a little break and then we'll come back and get into the actual discussion of the Buddha nature.
Okay.
So we'll come back at Kati. 15-minute break. So we'll come back at like 32 after the hour, wherever you are.
Okay.
So is this stuff difficult for you all to understand?
It's a lot to understand at once.
The
Okay, this is coffee, yeah. The coffee
So the coffee is really tasty today.
I put sugar.
Oh.
Not sugar, the one you.
Okay.
Chining moment de baris.
Lasso. Yeah, Lasso.
Alma, are we on?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that also deep pagi tataya. Jiki. Continuum de here. So pe namba ingen so that two drops here. That two drops the danga continuum bola jugi is horvata. Tanga continuum jugi seni tanga to cheat to Yorba. And this one continuum jugi sena. Jotong sama tango yores, riba? Jotong sama tango. Tantipedi Jabika and Mareva. When a Jabika or dinner which is saying that the Madu here, your Marta, din Jonah Jim Sands in Tongo Rengaso. Careva. Tapping around the conchuson at Jubi Serva.
No.
Jonah, Naran Jorun could do him to
Jor, say we're
conchuson apart. That mean journey.
No, okay.
Tadanga Papa di Mare. Tanga Gendu in Gorota. Gendun in Jorgoro. Sanjil and Jorgo.
No.
Sanjil and Jogo, you're Gendun and Jogo. Tanamba China.
Yeah.
산지는 조고 그래 겐도는 조고
Hakos.
다들 조그레 세와짱시게 다 나서 느끼 요마다 다들 지 조나 다 가서 조 투브레다 말에 그래봐 다 텐데지를 삼방고도 다들 조 탐는 투비 짐생 가르래 디지 삼방도 보고요.
So now that we've discussed the three jewels, now as a Buddhist, then we say that we are practicing or accomplishing Dharma. And what does that mean? That means that we should be trying to transform ourselves into the three jewels. We should be trying to join with or to embody, to become those three jewels. And so if we are saying that we're going to do that, just saying it's not good enough, we need to actually understand if that's even possible or not. So we need to understand why or how it could be possible for us to become those three jewels. And so we need to understand the reasons behind that.
안당 가서 배 출로 남나 뭐도 소소고 건축대 야고요. 건축은 더 동대 대선라고 봐. 다 남바게 나로로 건축대 야디깔라 배는 심제제 이나양데 되니다 건축라야 건축 짓다와기는 저르고 여바지 길랭이요래. 마도 양 건축대 연바지제 심제대 연바지제니 디닝데 되네 타링부로 가야 야고요 마다. 내가 송자 코카스에 내가 랑파다 산지 차르고래 겐데 차르고다 밖에 잡나 어 된다고 지지니 된다디야 단디노나.
And so there are lots of different religious traditions, and all of them assert their own kind of supreme being, we could say. In Tibetan, we just use the same word, gunchok. It means rare and supreme. This is the same word that we use for like the three jewels. So anyway, every tradition posits their own kind of supreme level of being or supreme being, but they're all different in the way that they do that. And in Buddhism, we say that if you are a living being, that you can actually completely become exactly what that supreme being is. You can become precisely that. And so it's not like in other religious traditions where they say that that supreme being is somehow different and distant from ordinary people or ordinary beings. We don't say that. We say that in just purely colloquial, straightforward language that you will become, that you can become Buddha, you can become Dharma, you can become Sangha.
So da tende sonza da nge da hitwala tambo konju de she. Ani da dini da ngaso pena da pena ngada ji sampang bai na. 다 나랑 다 가서 건축을 남바테 되는데 적고나 저거나 아니 다 줄비게다 짐센라고 가려래 세디 되네 라이트 생기게 오요다마.
And so first I talked about the three jewels, what they are. And now for me, if I think that I want to accomplish those three jewels or I want to become those three jewels, then I need to have some kind of rationale, some kind of reasoning for why that's even possible. And so the reason for that is because of this Buddha nature. And so now we're going to get into some tricky terminology here. We have the word Buddha nature, but then we also have this word called Buddha lineage or Buddha. I'm just going to use the word lineage from now on for the Tibetan word rik. It's Rakiko Rikasa Rik for Tibetan speakers out there.
Ta right je Seven come.
And so we can use the terms very pretty much in the same way. We can use this word Buddha lineage, Buddha element, cause, or seed.
Ani teche undu da phagi riyo nane lechi ne sali dram ta thongwan jo. Rime nane lechi jang 가세요. 그다 동항아와 코너세 나와 코너세. 다디 페디 티고니 용고요. 다페나 도제라 다 세그레요나네 아니 레카지 제네 때레 예토라서바 레카체나 아니 디브 통그레스. 도데라 다 세그레 주니메나 데네 강암 바시바 마도 타토군 디브제 타고 마레세니. 당보다지 And
so we can start off with an example. So we have this quote that says that if within a stone it possesses the actual kind of within that stone, if it possesses the substance of gold, then by making efforts at purifying that gold in terms of somehow polishing the stone or refining it with heat and so forth, then you'll get the result of gold. You'll be able to attain that gold. But if there is no gold substance within the stone in the first place, then all of that work will be nothing but a cause for your own fatigue.
Pagilen dribajin thona timodi kanga jagravata kon guba yoreta dribachani mapatila tani kanga jabi ko guba yomata ko kanga rang reta so se dunga dukjung se relachi lobya mareta terang chadu yo.
And so even just ordinary worldly people in their work, they're exactly that same. They function in the same way. If they see that there is some result that they could attain, then it's worth their effort in order to try and work towards that. It's a worthwhile endeavor. But if they see that there's no result to be gained, then if they were to engage in that work, then it's nothing but, just nothing but suffering for them, nothing but difficulty.
제대제 데라 땡치니 아니 겐든라 삼노 동자나 제다 제니 낭그리자다 차토메 비드바리 조지 여바치 토나 아니 고카세데 강가 잡나 겐둥이 드리베티 통구 열다.
And so for example, we talk about accomplishing Dharma, practicing meditation. And so if we see that these qualities of the Sangha are attainable, that we could attain this this perception or this awareness of the true reality of the multiplicity and of the inner awareness, and that we could attain the freedom from the afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations, and the obscurations of selfishness, and we see that there is that result, then it is worthwhile for us to endeavor at that, to embody or to become that Sangha.
And then that Pelia dan Tatuba de Sanji se undukala, da Yagi Sanji Yanda, Kachinchi Rounder Pencil, the Yender Pencil, set ready in the machine at the Rounder Pencil, the Yender Pencil, and around the Juronji Yona, and in Kanga Japiorta.
And then similarly, when we go to the ultimate state of Buddhahood, then if we understand that it is possible for us to become or to attain all of these qualities of Buddha for the abundant qualities for self-benefit and for the benefit of others, we don't need to go back into the details of what those are. But if we know that we are able to become that, are able to embody that, then it's worthwhile for us to do it. And if we don't think that we're able to do it, or if we realize we are not able to do it, then there's no point in making efforts towards that.
Okay, that's
so that's the reason. So now we're going to talk more specifically about this Buddha lineage or Buddha nature.
That this Pagiyata, Jomdendiyata, Kasiri, Semjen Tamji Gijula, Dani, Dunga Trarong, Devan Tato, Tobrong. Geta Kaseri Tada Gendung goes at that Chini down to Sotamji Reva, and then Tatola that chance knew some that Dembaji Jong Jenny and the Ma De Yavreda or Natam Machi Chironson and T, the name Nana Yingetini, Dunga that are wrong correct into gas, the Ma Tembare.
And so the Buddha then saw that all beings have the capacity to be completely separated from suffering and for them to be attain this ultimate level of happiness. So that was the awareness of the true reality as well as of the manyness. So and then ultimately attaining those powers for the benefit of others, of wisdom, love, and power. Then he showed this to everyone else, that not only do I have these qualities, but so does everyone. Not only do I have this potential, but so does everyone.
당가서 남바지게 해봐인다 신기 드라타세 코르디비스 신기 드라타세 내게는 탐진 통송다 희송다 레송다 당안에 들어송다세 마코로 은이지 마 해야가다 코르디비스라
Korgiwusa.
당 코르페 망보여라발라다 코르디비스라 답에는 나라지는 제타와진된 체송세나 네 랍트비야 말아봐 같이 나라만 체서도 먹음마기니 야 냠바지 티우나 나 쿠판도 야그러다 당가 탐지제 바가를 랍로 그래봐 고 나랑 랍투고요 말아봐 다 좀된 되게 된다보다 코 탐지고 있어라 땅에 취 탐지 희송
That's it.
되는 찬스 되는 제타반 찬스 전예바
That's it.
찬스는 되는 마송바래.
And so the Buddha then in the midst of a great gathering said, I have seen things in their reality. I have seen the multiplicity of things. I have attained this. I have been liberated from suffering. And so we call that, the sounds of the lion's roar. And so like for me, I couldn't say that I have realized everything in its suchness or in its multiplicity because, at a certain point, someone's going to ask me a question that I can't answer. And that just proves that I haven't. So the Buddha, we say that this is the lion's roar of the Buddha, that in the midst of a great gathering of beings, he had that confidence. He had that he had attained this state.
아니 어디데스제니다 다데 송잔 다데 연달아 땡두깔라다 땡동데 다 탑을 키바지네 땡바레세다 나서 간전님마 바기 이제 자네 해바이나 다 땡동데 다탑 나츠비고니 마 땡바이스 마도제가 강여바데 나서 쭉바 쇼바다부진 마 땡야바이나
And so according to our tradition of the Nyingma, the way that we talk about the Buddha's teachings is we say that the Buddha taught in a skillful way or according to skillful means. And what that means is that he taught in various different methods and didn't just say everything that he had realized all at once, like vomiting out everything that he had actually known. Because if you just say everything that you know without regarding what the beings need or can handle, then it's going to be very difficult for them to understand what you're talking about.
Okay. That this song and then Mahan which song that Kablala Tony the Wajipa, Dangini, Regi, Yangi chat is so pashy, Taka Papa in Nick of this on the Young got Tamak of this on its old top the year and then that send a pagelas over the soul Tony Pa, Dangini, right there. Then this Gini, Kali Sinyam that in a domji about which Jay. Then this Gini Tanya easy.
And so Mipam Rinpoche explains this in that when the Buddha was teaching the middle turning of the Wheel Sutras, what he was talking about when he was talking about emptiness was talking about the basic space aspect of the Buddha nature. And that in the final turning of the Wheel Sutras, he was focusing on the qualities and powers of the Buddha nature, these different qualities of the Buddha nature, as opposed to just the emptiness of Buddha nature. And what he was doing was making it to where eventually those two sides of the same teaching would come together.
Da dodo wadi disona da nikab ngaso ko dever chedela da recome de tende right dela tini nangdong tini chani hego yore de nangdong chani hego de tini nika ande chini nyamden ro de na mutso de ngon thong yo da phajune cheche tsujune cheche de chini ngon thong yore tenda sonda dangbo jegi thoni pha tayon de tongbi chade yapo hago yore Teni yenda nomi chane pa tayon teni Namchag chade yawo je hago. Ta tini tsedi dong na ane kasiri leba chegi nona o ta tenda ndri ji redwa sambada ji ma ta he go na da ji go le lawo no teni chagi yore.
And so in brief what we're talking about is that when we're talking about this Buddha nature, we have to talk about two aspects of the appearing aspect and the empty aspect. And if we just talk about them together at the same time, it's going to be a cause of a lot of confusion because we start talking about appearance, then we talk about emptiness, then back to appearance and back to emptiness. It's a big cause of confusion. And so first we just talk about one aspect. So in that middle turning of the Wheel Sutras, we mainly focused in upon the understanding of emptiness. And then once you've understood that really well, then we talk about the appearing side. And then when you understand that really well, you can bring them together. And then in your brain, you'll think, okay, now I understand the connection and how it works together. And it becomes much easier to understand.
Te songsa da ka papa ka sa ta tongni de pe hie ne ta dang so ta bom jin de du som de so sa pe ma si ta pe ma bo re de de sin de tongni ki cha ti sha ja ma ta ten de ba re yang ti nyam de le de chi nang cha lun ru cha de ti te sin do chi tan chin de sin ro de ba re ba.
And so in that middle turning of the wheel sutras, in the middle turning of the wheel, then we have all these sutras called the boom, the 100,000 lines of Prajnaparamita. And so we have the extensive, middling, and condensed versions of those sutras. There's a lot of volumes of texts, and they're mainly focusing upon the subject of emptiness, where just as some small side points, they talk a little bit about appearance and spontaneous presence and so forth, but mainly focusing upon emptiness.
Anita, then da kasere yang jik dratung senkengen doda, senkengen shibin doda, and the gana ye life shibin doda, recom temigita, lasobata, ningpo temindo, jeseji. The yegi chadavalata, pape, tene kasereta, jik dakat lundum nui chatipe, ta wasar chatipe, so within it.
And then in other sutras called, the Serchangido, the Haibui, Shuido, then we have what we call the 10 sutras that taught the Buddha nature. And so in those sutras, then they mainly focus in on this appearing aspect of spontaneous presence and the aspect of the luminosity.
Okay. Yeah, that thing is. And
so what I'm just trying to tell you about right now is the way that the Buddha approached the teaching of the Buddha nature.
Teaching the Tonchukutuni, Gong, the Gabla, Tonchukutuni, Tanapa, Gom Chin, and still Tong over the Tong the Gala, then Simjil was the Chill, was a unit, and Casa de Genda, that Drubia Masik little out of child abuse.
And so this is also important for us as practitioners. So in the beginning, it's very important for us to focus in upon the aspect of emptiness, because our ordinary perception is that we are totally restricted and bound by appearances. And so to counter that, then we establish and meditate upon this aspect of emptiness. And then once we've seen that true nature of emptiness, then that inner luminosity starts to arise. And when that inner luminosity starts to arise, when we actually generate that inner luminosity, then it's easy to bring that into and to apply that to other practices.
Okay.
And so what I've been talking about here and what we're talking about is primarily the presentations which are discussed in the Nyingma tradition. And so otherwise there are a lot of other ways of discussing the Buddha nature of the different traditions in Tibet. And so if we got into that, we don't really have time for that. And it would also be very difficult to get into all the differing opinions about things.
Okay. Say here on the meaning same than Reva Yongel Koa language mato, Ketanga Koa language of Mares. The right said the right said the same than Reva Yoba the Tunicele Yago already.
So as soon as I use this word Buddha nature or Buddha lineage, you need to always be understanding that this is something connected to your mind, that this is a level of what we call a true reality, and that it is always something like an aspect of your mind. And don't think of it as just something over there. Think about it as an aspect of your own mind.
That then the Penata di Churonsonga Keja Trini, Tindicine, Yehona, Pen and Dichian, Tambun Digi, Gub di Popan Digicon and Seni di Ya. Yan Dichin and digging Seni di Ya, Dichon and digging Seni di Ya, Deb di Hekon, Koran so Seni di Yani. then it pen book yore. Big in sending the redas. And a dig young Tato tunic and the rich redas. Then a ready up and sending Martin a ten could Jensen Kun in road there, the day get on race.
And so, for example, we're talking about the kind of characteristics of things. So we talk about the sutras, the path of the sutras, as the path of characteristics or the path of definitions, even we can use that word. So when the Buddha was teaching things, if he was going to teach about this cup, first he would tell you all the characteristics and defining characteristics of the cup. And then if he was talking about the microphone or the pen or the book or whatever, so you talk about the defining characteristics of that, and then using a lot of reasoning and going into those characteristics to show the true reality or the true nature of the cup.
That the right because the top and also same singer yo maramata that this same rajina. This attention is same genseni yani dig chuni here on the color racial here the here. But the chetan the keje koronya mare. Tambo same sing in the paya. That same good the that tuning the wood la race.
And so, but here, when we're talking about this Buddha nature or this Buddha lineage, what we're talking about then is, you can't hold on to your mind, like it's not something you can hold in your hand. But if you could, then what's happening in this discussion is you're holding on to the mind and you're saying, this is the mind. And then you talk about the characteristics of the mind, and then you talk about the true reality of the mind. And that true reality of the mind is what we're talking about when we say Buddha nature or Buddha element. Or Buddha lineage. And so that's what we're always talking about. And so the discussion is very different. We're not just talking about the defining characteristics of some external object or something. We're talking about the reality or the true reality of your mind.
Okay. That is
so that's clear, right?
Oh, that's a teacher. That in this home that regular sending the Wichita Yadu Kalayanta sending Nilo Kanshi. Reba, that Tongchani Chuku Tambitraji Chebata, Namchani Zuku Tambitraji Cheba, said that it is Kokala Kawono Law Kachin to the Chizeta.
Namcha, Tongcha the
Chuku, Travik Jecheba,
Traviju,
Trajicheba, then Namchani Zogu Longproni Revala, Zuku Trajichebas, the Lichini, my Yahorda.
Traju Chepas and that.
Tralje cheba se undi kala da
Jumuni chegomara.
Da jimuni mare.
That's it.
Da ko de o traya tsam matu chige yonde de phagire yoyo khache tela den drab di bicha de so pha trawa tsam traje tsam cheba da jil ko yo.
And so when we talk about the defining characteristics or the definition of this Buddha nature, then we say that it is the true nature of your mind. And that from the empty aspect of Dharmakaya, it serves as a cause for, this is a technical term, cause for separation. And what that means is that the qualities are already there, but you need to remove some obscuring things. So it's a cause for separating what's already there from some obscuring aspect. So it's not a cause of Buddha nature because it's causeless, but it's a cause for removing something else. So going back to the definition, because this is going to repeat, it is the true nature of your mind, and the empty aspect of Dharmakaya is a cause of separation, or which functions as a cause of separation, and the appearing aspect of the form bodies, which functions as a cause of separation. That's the definition of the Buddha nature. It's a little bit difficult to understand.
Then Nangchani Zukupa Sharwanda Wichik. That Tindrigeta Savanti Yabachil, Konan Rikorda.
So one way we can understand this, the important point is that it is the true nature of your mind. And what's being said is that the empty aspect will serve as the cause of separation, which helps you to attain Dharmakaya. And the appearing aspect serves as the cause for you attaining or being freed from the obscurations, which reveals the form bodies.
And that page, that number mine, but so good is some much than Kumare. Number yin honey yin there was some tansona. Tanga Sanji me. Hina ya Mongba Nakale Kalich and Sanji Yata, Kasere, or 찬로그래라고 someday 지요 말에 대 말에 대 송사 트라제세비 짐센 때래다 마인바지 예바 차스면서 높던데 마인바지.
And so non-Buddhists, this would never even come across your minds, but for someone who's already a Buddhist, the ordinary way of thinking is, I'm not a Buddha right now, but gradually I will become a Buddha. And the reason for saying result of separation means that you're not functioning in a way where you are not something, but you will become it later, but that you already are that, and you just have to separate something away from that to reveal what you already are.
네. 올라서 다 대점이잖아. 아니 가서 되니만 론 안치롱서 공그래. 스타트 해라 그래.
We're just going to leave it at that and keep moving on because you'll understand further in the explanation what that means.
Okay. What does this mean? 아니 다 근데 손바다디 히 야와zam게 팽도요 말에. 되니 마다 가세를 리파고 듣고요.
And so just saying that and just leaving it like that's not really that helpful. We need to kind of prove this with some kind of reasoning.
Dena ripa song guni ma dravya garta di dene jasa chambang gomuk. Jomden di geta hingpo temin do pyeteso nona tape chik semchen tamchi sanji garangi imbachik dene kase hye ya yorwa. Tadi drubje ke tensik do ripa ndawo de dene sanji ta maungbi sanji chambang gomuk dene ripa song guni ta ma dravya bare.
And so there's three reasons that are given by the Buddha Maitreya, the future Buddha, who is the composer of this text, the Uttara Tantra that we're talking about. And so in those 10 sutras that taught the Buddha nature of the Buddha Shakyamuni, then he taught that all beings are of the same nature in having that Buddha nature. And then this Buddha Maitreya, the protector Maitreya in this text, then gave three logical reasons why that is the case.
Hola, so ta tela ta rikpa tela je re ngowo niksom senere bala. Je zawa zeban re tubi rikpa ngowo chuni je rikpa se ta rikpa song go na pa kuyorda.
And those three reasons are the reason of the cause, the reason of the result, and the reasons of the singular essence.
Okay. Ta tangbo penen re tudu
Je.
Ta penen dribde ta kasi de jel tu ba ji dugurwa o da de la tini zo sang ko ne chocher tang de yin yi ye me cher tang ri ye chanas le chen ko ta de sang ji ning bo jen se ta za ba korong ti na no la ri pa son de.
So in the root text it says the Buddha essence is ever present in everyone because the kaya of perfect Buddhahood pervades all, the suchness is undifferentiated, and they have the potential.
Adi, yeah, alright. That day, Naso de Jabding it is on the chain and a coca sits up on the Jabjin, they stop the one I hear you.
So if you are someone who is already like inclined towards or familiar with the process of debate, then it's actually very easy to explain this and very easy to prove this through that manner.
This is in Mongolia.
So we have all these, statements like if it's this, it has to be that because of this reason and blah, 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 blah. We have this, logical formation of structure.
And da kase di nasota mate jingre da japjiri tsingmbo jigets ko kwache gudwa.
But for us, we need to kind of explain things with a lot of words.
And in the sonzan da kare resena da pena da ngaso chingwa tandembata leda nyom ngaso tadan khwal ching kali yung eximje ji yo marwe. Ti dene di chingwa kunda demi kanza de jula yang adi re yores jimsa kare resena tene drib chisin drib jeba thongwi charas dan drib ngos ta ji pen sembe ina sanji ina tenda wuji tene drib thongwi charas ti je yosare jimsa ka se ngin drib thongwi charas ngin la kota dot disuna.
And so, for example, we have all of us ordinary beings who are bound in samsara by our karma and our afflictive emotions. All of us here experiencing difficulties, we say that they all have this Buddha nature. And the reason is because we see that there is someone who has already attained the result. And if there's a result, there has to be a cause. And so we can see like the Buddha, or we can see the major and minor marks of a Buddha, and we can say that those are the results which have to have come from some kind of cause.
So this is alles that the dog that we pay merta in search turn alle the do there then go sell yourself was then this end not tongue the door singing tell the word.
And so, like, for example, if we take some stone and we put it into a fire, and then in the end of that, we see some gold coming out from under the fire, out of the stone, we can understand finally that, oh, there was gold in this stone.
Okay. That thing song as the ball the current the Ray Kawai Tati Dola, the Carsen.
DNA test.
DNA is sort of reta. Taco DNA data go down the color. Oh, then how much the teaching is Sareva did the teaching was in sort of that.
Like with a DNA test, you can check your DNA and you can find out exactly what your ancestry was or whatever.
Kachin dot this one. Kachin Rivichi Yona, the Chaba Jimson the Carson, Kachin Rivichi Yona, that Jibita Chapser, that killing Terry, that Nambag Sena, that is your.
But anyway, the real reason for this, and the reason why this is like a convincing or conclusive, what we would call in Buddhist philosophy a pervasive argument, is that if there is a result, there has to have been a cause. And we say that is a pervasive argument, that there's no like holes in it. Like if there's a cause, if there's a result, there has to have been a cause. And if there was no cause, then it follows conclusively that there can be no result. So anyway, this is what we call like the you can go either way with cause and result. If there is no cause, there can be no result. If there is a result, there has to have been a cause. And so this is just sometimes what we call in Buddhism the logic of the matter of fact. Like it's just a matter of fact that if there's a cause, there has to be a result, and if there's a result, there has to be a cause, and without a cause, there can be no result.
This one done chain number tambo de kilango oh that drive the rich yona. But
first of all, you have to accept that that's even true, or else this reason doesn't make any sense. It's not going to work. If you can't accept that if there's a result, there has to have been a cause, first of all, you have to accept that basic level of logic for this reason to even make any sense, or for it to be considered, logically or somehow a proof,
Ani pena ngada china tape sanji gen sembe no chron so ngu se ta joban thong na o chron so go oh ti phagin kembo de la mama sanji ge tene di je yo sare ba ter tan den sembe sama thong de du singen da tan sembe ngu de jor so singen da chi ta de si orda.
And so, for example, like if you saw that I had some of these major and minor marks of Buddhahood, then you would think, oh, that means that that Kempo had the causes for that Buddhahood, because now we see these major and minor marks of Buddhahood, which are the results of that, which are the manifestation of that. So what you see is actually a direct perception. Even though you are inferring the cause through an inferential perception, you saw the result for yourself directly. And so the example that we give is of Shakyamuni Buddha, who attained Buddhahood in Bodh Gaya there.
That is any casere delita casere sembe that giba down the cabla. Oh, then Tanga so pay dela jarchini, and yenda benanga jilla jarchung and just then with yella jarchung is on. Oh, then this chilling.
And so we say that the Buddha was originally just an ordinary, son of the king, Setzang. And that he was an ordinary being with karma and the afflictions who was bound, and suffered. And then later, when the Buddha manifested the major and minor marks of Buddhahood, then we can understand we take him as the example that that ordinary beings have the cause of Buddhahood, and we can infer that onto anyone like me or Justin or anyone.
Okay, understand? Oh, that thing over there. Da, kachin, tense kurang tekanda wuji jena da, oh, simjen tamjela da, je gasere da, re, chingwa kunda dembi kaza deso tamjela dene, re yore, zosan control. Chobishar, da wuji laundi, teka da de jena di takes a mando banda jire. Kasi tatan troyo mareva. Ina ya, rikpi pela ma jani he undi, dene tense nipa goni dragunde.
Tanda troyo marisen.
Tapene chel tadan troyo marva.
Yo mario.
Tapene chima kunde de chirong jilo chuje rayo de dene dusan kun trubisesena tensek din rogu marva. Tro meva tata. Troyo marde tensek nibi kamni dene dragungure.
And so if we take the first reasoning, which is that we say that all beings, all living beings who are bound in samsara, we say that they all have the Buddha nature, and the reason is because they are displaying the qualities of the result, or someone is displaying the qualities of the result. Like somehow that Buddhahood is shining forth. And so if we look at that directly, we'd say, well, just taking it at face value, it doesn't really work because, for example, Justin, or we don't see anyone here who is manifesting the result. We don't see that directly. But then we make it to the second reason.
Okay. Yeah, that in this home that dancing tambo dege, then Kasser Jibi Yona, then Jayipingipa, that's what they hear yours.
But the point is that the first of these reasons is that if there's a result, then it is certain that there has to be a cause.
Naso, Ani that did Re tennis chain tarum di tana yemba chain roten te is jihe chain recommendo.
That's it.
Reba Matuji that the rang he devania te is kokali kop charmena.
That's it.
That tennis hunda kachenda chima kunda de bikaza de la tene kasere sang jirong yote tene controbi sasene. Ta tegi goni padrapche.
And so da karila
da pena zosan kon
te hako sandeche karisum sandingala
da pena ti just stand uchila tene raba chima kunda tembi just stand uchila tene kasre reyote tene controvi sanda uchipa tambola.
That's it. And so the first reason is like we can take just me for an example, Justin. We say Justin, who's a being bound in samsara, it follows that they have the Buddha nature, or that they can attain Buddhahood. And the reason that we give is because that Buddhahood has manifested somewhere, like from an ordinary being. Like there is someone who has become a Buddha.
So,
so we might have some doubts about that.
Hina yang ta de toba saya reha ane karchini tada tene thongkum duwasi tende ke sangji ba tada thongkum duwasi sembe se de ta de yang momboji hihyoji mara ale te tada ma hi ta de deni di chunig ribi ko ni dukbo ta ni ba de chunig ribi ko ni dukyo ta.
And so of course it might be easy for us to accept that if there is a result that there has to be a cause. But then the reason that we give that is the result, we don't really see that. We don't see those major and minor marks of Buddhahood, or we don't see someone who is a Buddha or whatever. So now we move into the second of the reasons, which is the reason of the true reality.
Ta nibi kausala o de ngigres ta chapte singa wala gudawala chapte ani de yin nila chipar me bicharos ta jimsen tere chunig ripadela.
And so, chapters the trona de la rig you pay chapters urwala.
Mare that de kasiri re yume tada zosan contribution se labya mare ba aku mangi be chasmo ba
reba
ta niba de la ngire
Okay, and so the first reason we might have some doubts, we might say, well, it's not really certain that just because someone attained Buddhahood that Justin has the cause of Buddhahood. So we might have a doubt about that. And we say it is certain. And the reason that we give for that is because there's no distinctions or no differentiation within suchness, within the true reality.
다 디기페 고 데보드 오브 지셰바이나 다 나르 잡 더럽다 아니 다다디 저스테니나 춘이레 치바메 비서 예와메 비서선 다 데고고여다.
And so the reason, the way that we should be able to understand that in a simple terms is that is because the sanji samajingunagi.
당마 오래다 산지비게다 가세다 디 디요 다디
samajingungi gansa de ngani.
다디 세지오 말에 다제당다 산지실 남는데고 다 도지될 랍딩이 디 메지오 말에디 로 니동지 만로기 대당 안에 가세 체니라 춘이리 치바메 비샤세 데고고래.
Okay, and so what we should understand then is that the reason why that's true is because the Buddha who went to Bodh Gaya and so forth, and me, there's no difference in our ultimate nature.
다 디니라 치바 여바지 yen다가 드랍 탐나 아니 치바 야초그래. 디니게 ngo고라 치바 메바지 차데요나 아니 바두데 저롱와라 츠주데 저머롱비 가서 짐세 해야지 요마다.
And so you know, if there's no difference in our true natures, so for example, you know, if someone else could prove that there was a difference in the true natures, that would be a different story. But as long as we are accepting that there's no difference in our true natures, then there would be no reason why one of those two would be able to become Buddha and the other one wouldn't. For example, a big fire is hot, a small fire is also hot. So, for example, you can make a fire in the east, in the west, in the north, in the south, but they will all be equally hot. They will all be the same nature of providing heat or of being hot in nature. And so there's lots of different people. There's Indian people, Tibetan people, Western people, Kempo, Justin, everyone, the Buddha. But they are all the same nature. And so the second reason is the reason of the true nature. And so when we're talking about that true nature, we're talking about the true reality of a thing. And when you get to that point, there's no real arguing with that. There's no real discussion around that. You've reached the ultimate point. Like, for example, with fire, the nature of fire is heat. We don't need to provide reasons for that. It just is the reality of fire.
And this one called the Naso Tada Karim Hide was the Chuni Kang, but they Mihini, and Naso Jubia Yore, Hia Yore, Durban Ramadakoya Yore. Chuni Kurang Lab Sanet and Sareda Kotega.
And so what we don't understand that true reality, and because we don't understand it, then we debate about things, we have doubts about things, we argue about things, and we say a lot of different things about them. But if we actually arrived in the state of that true reality, there would no longer be any debate.
Okay. And that is on that the riba niba degeta ko chuni riba se on the kalayata kasere pagi sanji bi kaza de de dada de sang jinjo kaza de da nibo de tene chuni giba imbichani phaju de sang jirong na ngaya garjini sang jirong mere otere da.
And so the second reason then is taking this reason of the true reality and saying that that person 2,600 years ago who was becoming Buddha, and then me who wants to become Buddha, we have the same nature. And because we have the same nature, just as he was able to attain Buddhahood, I am also able to attain Buddhahood. I also have that cause or that source of Buddhahood.
said doing it, then it take mail tani said tampona, said doing it, Jimba de said me to Jim say here.
And so if you have one stone which possesses gold and you refine it through heat and so forth, fire or whatever, and it produces gold, you can actually refine that and get the gold out of it, then there's no reason why another stone that possesses gold wouldn't be able to extract the gold. You wouldn't be able to extract the gold from that second stone.
Oh, that's so. That in this home,
So that's the second of the three reasons.
That ditches had the galata, Zosangan project, the yin Zosangan project, the yin method, Ryuchanas. Ta somebody called that ray about trouble word, I forgive Matella. Ta Lujan Tamji San Jirong, Jim Sankas, Ray Ubishas, ta radical here you are. Tambo didn't rag the dub the Hidola. Ta rag in drop Sareva, ta Ray Ubishas, Jim Santa here.
And so now, because we've gone through this process of understanding that people have the Buddha nature, because we have the same nature as the Buddha, we've proved through the second reason that we have the same true reality or the same true nature as the Buddha. Then the third reason is, if we took a logical argument, we would say all living beings, it follows that they could accomplish Buddhahood because they have the Buddha nature.
That they let any jets out of it. Jetty, you know, the jet they get any derivative out here. They do what that.
And so then this is called the reason of having the cause which will bring about the result. So because the reason proving that we can't attain Buddhahood is because we have the cause, which is the Buddha nature, which will bring about the result of Buddhahood.
That in this home, go peji, that the song with that humble pen and that drive day, then it's jealous to go here be. Replying to drive to the Sejarval.
And so of these three arguments, the first is the one saying that because there is a result, because someone has attained the result, then the cause has to exist. And so then we call this the Okay. And so we call this the because the result relies upon the previous coming of a cause, then we call it the reasoning of the result reasoning, basically. By saying that there has been a result, then we can prove that there was a cause.
Somebody
And so then the third reason is the reason of the cause, which means that we have a cause that will produce a result. And so if we say that you can become Buddha because you have the cause, so that's what we call the reasoning of having the cause. And more explicitly, it's called the reasoning of having the cause that will bring about its result. And the middle of those, the second of those three reasons is what we call the reason of the true reality or the true nature.
So
and so what's being said here, to boil this down, is that generally speaking, if you are a living being, then it follows conclusively that you can become a Buddha. And so this reasons, this reason that says that beings are able to attain Buddhahood, what that means is that you are able to gain these qualities of knowing things in their suchness, knowing them in their multiplicity, having these qualities of awareness and freedom. Those are the qualities of Sangha, but when those come to their ultimate perfection, then that is Buddha. So it's saying that all beings are able to do that.
that the rest is up. Yeah, that current of which he go to go. That the that you don't get so there's someone else my stung in my head. You don't put the required days and go trouble your in a young.
I think this is quite difficult to understand, but did you get what I'm talking about with these three reasons?
Oh, then the song that Tambo Sanji singing the Karako do take some tangormato, Sanji singing the Chikan Kodi Mangel, some tang devaina, then the required Chome Chando.
And so first of all, you need to be thinking again about what is a Buddha. What do we define as a Buddha? Because if you're unclear about what a Buddha is, then this whole reasoning is really pointless.
And this one was Sanji de he. Then it not so good by the same day at this he. Then it did Naya, Cassin, Rolo do him do it he. I'm not so right drops it, it's all tereta.
And so when we're talking about establishing the Buddha nature, what we're talking about is first knowing what a Buddha is, having a good understanding of what a Buddha is, then understanding a bit about your mind, then understanding, can your mind become that Buddha or not? That's what we're talking about when we talk about establishing the Buddha nature.
Okay. That patching it is just sabotage. The Kahian, Travana,
So I think I explained this, fairly clearly, but maybe there's still some doubts.
Dangin Dodido, which is here by Nanta, Casere rate setting and day, just same Rangi. They are Sanji to begin Niba make Delaco rate set.
And so, in brief, to bring this back together, this Buddha nature or this Buddha lineage is the nature of your mind, which has the power to accomplish Buddhahood or bring you to Buddhahood or manifest Buddhahood, something like that.
That day, Naso, Caseta, Tada Nasu, Tana, Sinjin Tamaji drub Rungo in a manata, Naso to Wasaki, Ravala, Malaina, Corripachi, the Mambo, your Semchen Laya, right up, same Naton, drop Mamboji Dua. That taking the Kashin and Zambaling in a tap, Tendra with a junior magic and drained out to put in the Mambotua. That the Yetamchilla Archie in a Samsanda, which the which he is a Gironda, Toronda, that the little Gionaman and something I saw to Wasagua.
And so, we probably are having a lot of doubts, about whether beings are actually able to become Buddha or not. We have all these thoughts like, oh, there's some beings who are more intelligent than others, and different beings, different kinds of living beings have all different kinds of minds, and some people, there's no way they have the Buddha nature. Some really awful people and really bad spirits and ghosts and all these kind of things. We might have these kind of doubts. Like, could they really develop this this timeless awareness, this primordial wisdom? Could they really realize this kind of things? And we have a lot of doubts about that. And so think back to the views in the times of ancient India at the time of the Buddha. The time of the Buddha, there was so much, discrimination amongst, racial or caste groups, amongst genders and so forth. And at that point, it was almost like, according to the common views of people, it was like a line in the sand. Like, it was conclusive, like only certain beings are going to be able to accomplish some kind of spiritual practice, and other ones are just totally unable to. And at the time of the Buddha in ancient India, there were so many other people that came to the Buddha, arguing with him, debating to him, asking him questions, and a great number of them that ended up becoming his disciples.
Ani they ngaral and driven over the keki yona ani a drumna pentu yoreta they mena ani chedi that chomage chago this on the tambo round than each church than the two yore
And so for us, we don't have such a big difficulty as they might have in ancient India. But for us, the first thing we need to do is think for ourselves and think about, okay, so I want to practice the Dharma, but if I do that, is there some result I can get? And we need to think about that first. And so if we recognize for ourselves that we can attain that result, then it makes sense for us to engage in that. And if not, then there's no point. And so first, we need to apply this reasoning in order for us to gain conviction or in order for us to gain belief and trust in our own practice.
Okay.
So if you guys have any questions, you should ask me, because otherwise, if I just keep on talking, then I don't know that we're going to get any more clarity. Is there any questions in the chat?
No question.
I guess everybody fell asleep.
Ore dang aso di tisel mangbo ji main bare teni ngegi de songda ta dige kasere ta chetang ge ji soso la tenda wo ji ma to na yang ta soso chu du bya ge tenda wo ji ma to na yang chetang ge de ji ye ba teni ta goya go na pen tu ye be so ji 좀 된 데 song yo re ta sengyam me la nye ba ta yang da men zi yang da chu le ko da ja la bi jong a kang de ba se jo ma re na ta de de ta di pe na re yo ba te ni re da te di 좀 된 데 ya hyu yo re ta nge di ore re yo ba ko wa se go ma re ko wa da shi ba da tu na pen tu ka re yo min ko nge ji ma hye ge das.
And so the Buddha also taught about the benefits of understanding and knowing and realizing that there is a Buddha nature, that you have the Buddha nature.
Okay.
Okay, maybe I should answer your questions first.
Okay, they say, can you talk more about appearance in relation to form bodies?
Dadi chegi Riki Tsini Shadu da Simgi Simgi Ranshin Gawanshi. Dadi Nangchini Zuku singing the Leanchi Goa Kandri Linguresa. So they asked, what's the connection, or can you talk more in connection with appearances and the form bodies? So when I asked Khen Rinpoche, I referred back to the definition of the Buddha nature that he gave, where he was talking about how the appearing aspect serves as the cause of separation that reveals the form bodies. And so first off, let's come back to what I was saying when I said that the Buddha nature is the nature of your mind. So keep that clearly in mind first.
Sem de yadu galaya da sem de tongba chigure vesina chikam mejuresina mare. Chik nangcha dada ngaso ge chik someday and I think the chachi to tomongdo which chik kadune shadding a te chigure vesina deyang mares.
And when we think about the mind, then the mind isn't a mere emptiness, which is some kind of blank nothingness, and nor is it merely just appearances, like the appearances that are always appearing in our mind of our three poisonous minds of attachment, aversion, ignorance, and so forth.
And then this one movie Chinese some pangsong then semi mo de then the bomba kachenchi kasere ndere senenga so pe then kase tha tong ne pe do du lo hyeung ge dan then ge ta kase sem ge ta phachi de samyol in dipa so do ji ma to then tha je gi ta din dram re se no then ya thya ji yo ma re ko mo pe zeni do ya de kala pong ni lan do ya ge yo des.
And so when we think about the real essence of mind, then essentially it's empty. And what that means is that if we try and point it out and say it's this or that, and we try and find some kind of solid singular thing that we can point to and say that it's this, we never find anything such as that. It's something which is beyond our ordinary concepts and beyond our ability to point out and say it's this or that. And when we seek it, we keep seeking and seeking and seeking, and we come down to emptiness. We never find something solid that we can ascribe to and say, this is mine.
And the tula pe number the yani tenen rong the kalaya ani Kick Dada Sopen, the Chahito, Tomogli, Travigatani, Gom Gata, Nawachi or the Osaka Nawasage. That the Osaka Nawan date and in touching the Gavla, and a Sebje Yendo Yendal and Rodonchi Achid, Queen Nawa de Carina Shalom Rumengita. That Sharumende, that did not just the Tesi.
And so when we apply ourselves in meditative absorption in that state of emptiness, and when that reaches its kind of ultimate conclusion, when we go deeper and deeper into that, then eventually we have what we call an appearance or a meditative appearance of what we call the state of utter luminosity or state of luminosity. And when we bring that to its, ultimate conclusion, when we perfect that, then that aspect of our mind is the aspect of our mind which can appear in various forms in order to train or in order to lead beings in certain ways. It's like we're talking here, I think, maybe more on a level of what we could call pure perception. And so what we're talking about then is that the mind has this capacity then to appear in whatever form is necessary for beings' particular capacities and needs. And right now we're unable to do that in our ordinary state. But when we have perfected the power of that meditation and that state of luminosity, then we have that capacity to appear in various forms. And so that's what's meant by the appearing aspect serving as the cause of separation, which reveals the form bodies.
The other questions are, how do afflictive obscurations are cleared away? And how are the cognitive obscurations cleared away? And how is self-interest obscurations cleared away?
Drepa sum den the country Japan gores the Nimongi Drepa the Chato the chick member Drepa.
Naso Ta Chato Ta Pache Chi Kaseo that depend on so good that ditchy here and take it to Tanga so pen a gom which my jump to Rivalata. That gom jamni, then this chain mama, that cassi ah, Casel. Tunigi chat is a son, Tongyata. Then Cassi Tonga, the Topa, then this chound the gobla, and so Tada Jigta, the lower guitar, Jig Pagina Sota. Sen rock issue, it's a little idea. The Hitler to Calipaco, Casseretini, that Gandu, Dan Gasegmata, Papang.
And so, when you're meditating and going deeper and deeper into your vision of or your realization of that true nature, then as you're gaining this realization, then all of these kind of temporary or adventitious, coarser states of mind, which are always functioning for us right now, eventually start to cease, or they are abandoned. They are relinquished through the vision of, or through the experience of that true reality.
That's a young which also here then they call it Chagres. Tenita Kachin Dodo which do not tapen and so cheek gomdo with Jamna Pena, da American Nune Tada, Chikasi Kanga, the Sotamji, the car to Pindunda, which is Sankuduas. They are Jake Revasta.
Karikan Kaktu
Penachik Sambala Kanga with the Yomare. That is so cheek Gomjibal, any Pank and do Sikido.
Already.
The day cook as a tapang revata.
So if I got into all the descriptions of what's said in the particular Buddhist philosophy text about how these are abandoned, it's going to be a very difficult discussion. But just in brief, just how people in America are drawn to meditation because they think it's going to help alleviate their problems. That's exactly what I'm describing here. It's like that by the power of the meditation, then those afflictive emotions, those negative states or those difficult states are abandoned through the meditation.
Ne couple days pengen of chong, the young casting us up the Muntu Goma Tabajet, and a young casting young Panson de Kanga de Long, the Tenekayam Tagan, the Daisy Chakados.
And some people, they meditate a bit and they get a little bit of immediate, help or good feeling or benefit from that. And then they don't continue in the practice and they just go on about their day, about their days, just trying to enjoy their lives or whatever. And then at a certain point, they get into another difficulty and they realize that they don't have any kind of, familiarity or power in the meditation. It didn't actually help them that much. And so when we're talking about these different levels of obscuration, we're talking about coarseness and subtlety. So the afflictive obscurations are the most coarse ones. And if you get through those, then you continue in through your practice. And eventually you go into a subtler level of mind, which brings about abandonment of a subtler level of obscuration. And when it comes to the obscurations of selfishness or of an inferior attitude, there's a lot of people that ask me those questions about that one. People always ask me, I should be concerned about myself. Why should I care about other people?
So
people seem to say that in America, the kind of prevailing kind of attitude or view is that first I need to work on myself, or first I need to think about my own, situation, my own problems.
And so
when we say the obscurations of an inferior view or inferior attitude or motivation, it's not necessarily we're not criticizing it or saying it's bad. We're just saying it's a more limited scope. When you only think of yourself and your own problems, that's a very small picture of the world.
Okay.
Can you speak about releasing attachment to the appearances as somehow not primordially pure?
Can you talk about abandoning attachment to appearances as if they're somehow like not primordially pure? Basically, like how to see the purity, I guess, to overcome attachment. Yeah. Karisegore madakwa rawaji tongoro wala. Ani di madakwa tonyo de deni nganso shemba rawaji chego wala. Changshen rawaji. Ani degi anchi di mayemba ki da dakwa tonya la chakpa machi gi tapshi kariyores.
Ani adi enchirong de kasere. Ki hine da lamdong la sopani zong de lamrba yin de gomda ani ko dik nang tanatani sama chongres.
So just by, following the path, starting with Samatha and Vipassana and going through all the different stages of the path, that's what that path does. That's exactly what will happen in that path.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no way for us to just take our mind, which is seeing things as impure, and pull it out and place it over there, and then take a different mind that will see things purely and place it here. It comes in stages through the power of your meditation.
Yeah.
And then the last question is, do animals have Buddha nature?
Of course.
Of course. And so when we were talking about the nature being one, we're talking about the nature of mind of any living being, any being with a mind. And so we can understand very clearly, like even some animals, they can learn new skills. They're very intelligent. So it's very easy for us to understand that. And so we always think that, humans are the best or something, but they're, different animals, different beings have their own particular, very powerful, senses and very powerful aspects. Some have very powerful eyes that can see much more clearly than ours, very powerful ears, noses, and so forth. And so that just means that whatever you focus on, whatever your life is focused in, that is going to, the power of that's going to develop. Okay. And so we could say, like, for example, animals, it follows that they can attain Buddhahood because because they have the capacity to also know the reality of things in their suchness and in their manyness. And we can see that because we can see that they actually can develop their intelligence. And so another thing we need to really be clear about here is just because we say you have the capacity to know something doesn't mean you have to know it in that body, in that lifetime. In Buddhism, we talk about a series of lifetimes, So just because you're an animal right now in this lifetime doesn't mean that you will be necessarily an animal in all your lifetimes. And just because you're a human right now doesn't mean that you will be a human in many successive lifetimes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did it. Okay. And that is Shiramadua. Oh, Kamajonga. And then the songs and that the right here, right at the Nichin here, good Jimson Carriore, Senicum Denderia, Shibare. Revala, that's your own good now, Casseriti. The way he been in Bogota, Reiki, Semja Tangeliores, to hear good Jimson Carres, the Yatibare.
And so in the Dola, Dona. In the sutras, then someone asked the Buddha, okay, you're telling us that everyone has this Buddha nature, so what's the point? Why did you say that?
Well, that did make up some Hilatin Guba. Here, Cassidy, Senjam, Mela, Nepata, Yangda Menzi, Yangda Chulukos. That's Senjam, Sedugala. Oh, de Yoba Hakonas, ye heavy Jim said, de Yore. Yoba de Hakoa, Kona Pinto Carriore. Senjende so Sen Shimbade, Onwala Guba Yore.
And so the Buddha then said there are some different reasons. And so one of the reasons is that if people know that they have the Buddha nature, then it will keep them from becoming discouraged.
Courage depending on solar Mumbujil, some no te yore. Tangarang Dukjai, Manjungi, Masit, Tokunda with the Nai, Mijendala, the Yawo Tangara, Toki, some be social and Yipitonati. They check Mares.
And so for a person who knows that they have the Buddha nature, then, like for us, a lot of us have these thinking, they think that I'm a really bad person. I'm an incapable person. Everyone else is doing something good and I'm not getting anywhere, so they really feel discouraged in their life. So a person that knows that they have a Buddha nature will not fall into that kind of thinking.
That kasi so ranging de tendeji yoba hako hor watako teaching sension gumares.
And so they know that that is their true nature. They know that that Buddha nature is their true nature, and therefore they won't get discouraged.
The
second point is that they won't disparage others. And so it will help you it will prevent you, if you know that everyone has the Buddha nature, then you will know, or it will prevent you from thinking that you're really good and that other people are stupid or inferior or whatever.
Yang da men jing se on de ta nguni chi yang tak pi ge ta chuning da wat yo mare da wo ra me so go se da de le yo re te kho ten da bol jin yo mare sta chuni ge ji yo mare be ta te ji yo mare da wo de ko yang da ba me ban jin bi ta wa de do gres
kar yo mare
ta pe na yang da ba se go mare be la ta pe na yang da
me do
yang da me ba ta wa ta pe na yang da ba ge ta rai ge rang yi sem jen tan chi la tani ka je dong ma la tra ji yo ba de ba thu ji yo ba yang da ba ji yo re ba ta de yang da ba me ba ta ni den ri ge de do ge se ye re.
And it will also counter the ideas that that this true, what we consider to be true, people who refute that or who deny the existence of that. So it will prevent you from falling into the view that you don't have the Buddha nature, or that you don't have the capacity to attain Buddhahood or overcome your suffering and so forth.
Tene nguni chi samno tana sona tene chi kaseta thamchele chiba yore tene samno chi tangba inarwa te chi ko malayang chiba yore tene tela soba ga chi semche da tendo da chi ta kasre reila soba ta gare she thamchele da chiba do chalu ro ko.
And so if you don't see that true reality for yourself, if you don't see that Buddha nature for yourself, then you just stay in your ordinary level of thinking. Then there are distinctions between everything. There's differences in people. There's differences. You could even see differences in different animals, different people, different races, different everything. You can find a distinction in anything. And so knowing that everyone has the Buddha nature will prevent you from falling into those wrong views.
다 파지볼 대 여반 통데 디기 메디기 강아지 잡나 콜라 연대 깨지 여바진 통데 저런 거 디지 아스니 닌게 침비고리 담지니 데라 꼬마지비 그바요레스.
And then another purpose is that by knowing that there is the Buddha nature, it will also help you to encourage others in the direction of this, good behavior, or even what we could call authentic Dharma. And so when you see, for example, just a simple example, you see someone learning something or practicing something, and you can see that they are improving their lives through that, then through your own, through understanding the Buddha nature, it will help you to actually encourage them, to be encouraging to others on their personal development.
Tadi so dengan deso tamchi that delecik donga trabi tapji yobaji susubin tone any particular koma jabu yorda.
Koma jabs and that console
ya that churong din the jason de ya
courage.
That jig ben gom jabs and that lojung jason
Okay. And it will help you encourage them into making some efforts in this authentic path. Like, for example, there are a lot of people who are just really stuck in places in their lives where they're just stuck in this place of difficulty. And it will help you, if you know that they have this Buddha nature, you know that they have this potential to improve, to help you to encourage them in that direction towards improving themselves or towards some kind of mind training or meditation or something.
ta daja la se undi ta kasere ngarang la ta pe di regla supate so yoba shi jenta ngarang le lava ta yenda jen juni yo mare se reba ta yenda la khota piti me ba ta ndo reba ta daja la bi chen ta ngarang le lava ta yenda siti me ba ndo tinde digi tawa de do se.
And then another purpose is that it will prevent you from getting into a state where you think that you're somehow superior to others.
And this one so ray of a hina and pinto to the
And so by understanding that everyone has this Buddha nature, then there are all of these kind of benefits that come from that knowledge.
And then this one that they that dig it so that right the pahi. Any time when you Julamando and China, then a regi jola that song of the hill. That song of say only that they got a drop this or trani and in river that tato but to don't go that will lump the keep at some in my head over that.
And so then after discussing the Buddha nature, if we were following the progress of the Uttara Tantra text, the Sublime Continuum text, the next we would talk about enlightenment. And so the enlightenment then is that state where you're completely separated from all of those obscuring factors, and that result is fully manifested. And it talks about all of the kind of stages of that and the qualities of that result and so forth.
Lower there,
and so what's being talked about is that ground, that foundational thing, which we call the ground of separation, the ground which is to be separated from those obscuring factors, or those obscuring factors are to be separated from that. It is pure. But in this temporary state, there are these adventitious and temporary difficulties or obscuring factors which are obscuring it just in this temporary and adventitious way. And then in the end, when those obscuring factors are completely separated from that ground, then we have that result that we called the Buddhahood of the twofold purity, the two kinds of purity. And so we're just going to leave it at that point today. And if in the future, if you all were to study the Uttara Tantra, the Sublime Continuum text, then from the beginning to the end, it goes through completely with, scriptural citations, logical reasons, proofs, and so forth for each and every point. And it's not just some basic explanation where they just say like, this is this and that's that. They actually, have reasons for everything.
So
in the sutras, when they talk about this Buddha nature, they speak of the Buddha nature as something that you should know about. And if you know about it, you will gain this and that benefit from that. So then it tells you, how you are to practice or how you are to, accomplish or make that Buddha nature become manifest.
Okay. And this
and so I was thinking that for those of you who are in the midst of doing their Ngondo practices, that this would be helpful for you.
Yeah. So, Anita, the Kasiri. Oh, Tata, some good Nangatanita, Justin. Tini, Tapi to Valachi. Oh, Kasiri, Kadim Chimondo. And it took the chess.
So, Justin's really helpful for us. Thanks and stuff.
Oh, thanks, house doors. And then last of them, that rain Dwalachik, Dwala Jupiter, Naso di Roma Nambatani, the Tajano Jupiter, Loma Tangelaya, Tujice.
And thanks to all of our students there's a few of us here in person, and then as well as to all of you who are joining us online today.
Okay, thank you. Oh, that's all. Sonam de tamche zipa nye topne nyebe danam panche jiga namche wala truba yesipe zole drubo. That's all. Okay.